Chapter 542. In the main hall, as the Divine Sea Realm cultivators spoke, the situation seemed to become clearer. No matter what method Lu Yiye used to suppress Tianji's punishment, he must have paid a huge price. Moreover, at this moment, it was very likely that he could no longer kill. If that was the case, then why should the myriad demon ridge be afraid of him? Although he had the ability to sneak into other people's bases, under the restriction of not being able to kill, his threat to the myriad demon ridge was almost negligible. Of course, this was just a guess. Without concrete evidence, it could not be confirmed. It's simple to verify, someone said. First, find out where Lu Yiye is, then find some Tianjiu cultivators to test him. Then, we'll know if he can kill again. That makes sense. Let's do that. Does anyone have any objections? I agree. No objections. I have a suggestion. Try to find Tianjiu, who is on the spirit stream list. He is too weak to verify anything. Also, if possible, maybe we can take the opportunity to eliminate him. Okay, then it's settled. My Baiyue sect can send one person. Bay Pavilion can send one. Flying Thunder sect can send one. A group of Divine Sea Realm cultivators spoke one after another. Soon, a team of 20 or 30 people was decided. All of them were on the Spirit Stream list, and many of them were ranked in the top 20. Sitting at the head of the table, a Divine Sea Realm cultivator who had not spoken until now, said, "Then please send the message to the Spirit Stream battlefield and let the little guy move out." Everyone accepted the order and immediately began to send the message. However, at this moment, there seemed to be some information coming from outside. Many Divine Sea Realm cultivators began to investigate one after another. After a while, their expressions became serious. Even the Divine Sea Realm cultivator who had spoken just now frowned. He raised his hand and said, "What we were discussing just now, stop for now." He raised his turbid eyes and glanced around the hall. He slowly said, "We received news that the Cloud Sun sect's base was breached by Lu Yiye half an hour ago. More than a dozen people died." As soon as he said that, the entire main hall quieted down. These warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm were still discussing how to prove their speculation. But now, it seemed that there was no need to do so. Lu Yiye had already killed his way to the Yunyang sect and killed more than a dozen warriors of the Yunyang sect. Naturally, their speculation was not valid. A powerful warrior at the Spirit Sea Realm was enraged. He gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, "Bastard!" This person was a warrior in the Spirit Sea Realm from the Yunyang sect. He happened to be here. He had also received a message from his own sect and knew what had happened at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Although compared to New Moon sect, their casualties were much lower, but that was because they had learned from New Moon sect's example. The Cloudy Sun sect's cultivators were more decisive in retreating. Otherwise, based on Lu Yiye's methods, he would have killed a river of blood and mountains of corpses. "Does anyone have a map of the Spirit Stream battlefield?" the old man asked. He had never imagined that, as a Divine Sea cultivator, he would be personally involved in the Spirit Stream battlefield. However, the Spirit Stream realm was the foundation of every sect, and the matter had already reached the point where he had to intervene. "I do." As the voice spoke, a map of the Spirit Stream battlefield was taken out. The Divine Sea Realm cultivator poured his spiritual power into it, and someone else raised his hand to construct a strange spiritual pattern. The spiritual pattern and the map were linked together. In the next moment, a huge diagram appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The diagram was none other than the map of the Spirit Stream battlefield. New Moon sect's encampment isn't close to the Cloudy Sun sect's encampment, but it isn't far either. The old man at the head looked at the map and continued, "With Lu Yiye's strength, he should only need half a day to arrive. However, there are other sects in between the two encampments. Why did Lu Yiye not invade those other sects' encampments, but attack the Cloudy Sun sects?" Judging from Lu Yiye's route, he was specifically targeting the Cloudy Sun sect's encampment. Brother Fu, what's the reason behind this? The Divine Sea Realm cultivator from the Cloudy Sun sect, the one surnamed Fu, had an ugly expression on his face as he said, "We've received news that a disciple from our sect, Wei Kei, was among those who attacked Lu Ye in the Spirit Stream battlefield. This should be the reason why Lu Ye came looking for us." As soon as he said that, the expressions of many Divine Sea Realm cultivators turned ugly. First, it was Tan Xing's New Moon sect, followed by Wei Kei's Cloudy Sun sect. Lu Ye was clearly targeting them. However, these two people weren't the only ones who had attacked Lu Ye in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Many of their sects had also participated in the attack. Didn't this mean that Lu Ye would also run to their own encampments? There were still some people who weren't sure about this, as they didn't know if any of their disciples had participated in the Spirit Stream battlefield. This was a huge crisis. They all sent out messages, telling the disciples of the Spirit Stream battlefield to be on guard. Once they discovered any traces of Lu Ye, they were to immediately retreat back to the 9 prefectures. Now that their encampments had been destroyed, the support from the Heavenly Fate Pillar would definitely be lost. The only thing they could protect now was the lives of their own disciples. Brother Fu, did Heavenly Fate punish Lu Ye after he killed someone? The cultivator surnamed Fu said, "Let me ask." He sent a message back to his sect to inquire about the situation, and soon received a reply. Yes. Ever since he killed the first person, he has been surrounded by purple lightning. In the large hall, there were close to 100 Divine Sea Realm cultivators, and all of them fell silent. They couldn't understand the situation on Lu Ye's side. Originally, they had guessed that he had some special method to suppress the punishment from Heavenly Fate. However, from the information they had obtained, it seemed that something was wrong. If he really had some method to suppress it, there was no reason for him to be surrounded by purple lightning. However, if he hadn't been suppressed, how could Lu Ye be safe and sound? After a long while, the old man sitting at the head of the table said, "A few months ago, our myriad demon ridge had already compromised once. It has only been a few months, yet Lu Ye has actually made such a rude request again. We can't allow this evil trend to grow. Otherwise, if he comes every few months in the future, could it be that we have to compromise every time?" Everyone fell silent. Thinking about it carefully, although Lu Ye was a little despicable, he was still a reasonable person. After receiving the safety money last time, he didn't make things difficult for the myriad Devil Ridges sections. Not long after, he reached the Cloud River realm and left the Spirit Stream battlefield. This time, there was a reason for this. If he hadn't been targeted in the hunting ground, he wouldn't have come to the Spirit Stream battlefield. Of course, that was what they thought, but they wouldn't say it out loud. "What do you think, Old Chen?" someone asked. "Find some people to enter the Spirit Stream battlefield and explain the situation to him. I don't think this kid is a brainless person. I think he knows what the consequences are if he is too reckless." Then, Old Chen explained his plan. After hearing it, the Divine Sea Realm cultivators nodded in agreement. In any case, Lu Ye had given them a deadline of 10 days, so no matter what the result was, it was better to talk to him first. Although there wasn't much hope, what if they reached an agreement? Even if they couldn't reach an agreement, they still had 10 days to prepare. They couldn't just give him whatever he wanted. How would the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators behave in the future? Wouldn't they care about their reputation? While the Divine Sea Realm cultivators were discussing, in the Cloudy Sun sect's encampment, Lu Yu was immersed in checking the situation of his talent tree. A large amount of gray mist was burning on the tree, indicating that there was still enough fuel. The main reason was that he didn't kill too many people this time. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he didn't kill enough. After realizing that Lu Yi had killed his way into the encampment, the Cloudy Sun sect's cultivators quickly began to evacuate. In a short time, all of them had fled. It also saved Lu Yi some trouble. The only thing that made him feel helpless was his merit points. He had already spent all his merit points to buy the Earth Core Fire to fuel his talent tree. In the end, after this round of killing, the contribution points displayed in his battlefield imprint had changed to owed 435 contribution points. This was the first time Lu Yi knew that merit points could be owed. It was an eye-opener. From the looks of it, Tianji would never make a losing deal. Lu Yi was convinced. Fortunately, he still had some spoils of war. After picking and choosing, he threw them all into Tianji's treasure house. Only then did he pay off the merit points he owed. Lu Yi didn't know what the consequences of owing Tianji merit points would be, because no one had ever done this before. After all, who would owe merit points? However, during the short time he owed Tianji merit points, he had a feeling of uneasiness, as if something bad would happen to him at any time. From the looks of it, owing Tianji merit points was very likely to affect one's luck and make everything go wrong. Someone with such amazing luck like him had such a feeling after owing Tianji merit points. One could imagine what would happen to ordinary people if they owed Tianji merit points. They might even fall down while walking and choke on water. As the talent tree continued to burn, the purple lightning lingering on the surface of his body slowly dissipated. Tao Zhengyu walked out of Tianji Hall and said excitedly, "Fifth senior brother, where are we going next?" He was also addicted to the taste. Following his fifth senior brother, there was no danger at all and he could even plunder the blessings of other sects, especially those from the core circle. Although the blessings he plundered had to be converted into merit points when he returned to the sect's encampment, as the current guardian of Blue Blood sect's encampment, he could still give himself some preferential treatment and receive a monthly salary. Not to mention anything else, he wouldn't have to worry about merit points to buy heaven-grade secret arts in the future. This could also be considered his travel expenses for following Lu Yi on this business trip, and he believed that his second senior sister would also allow it. Looking at the previous guardian of Blue Blood sect, only he and his fifth senior brother had plundered the blessings of enemy encampments. The others had never had this opportunity. He was extremely proud to be able to enter Blue Blood sect. Thinking back, he was just a loose cultivator, alone and helpless. He couldn't even guarantee his own cultivation resources. However, after joining Blue Blood sect, his life became better and better. Now, the monthly salary he received from the sect was comparable to the treatment of a first-grade sect's disciple. Just this alone was enough to make 90% of the spirit stream realm cultivators in the 9 provinces envious. Chapter 543. The Blue Blood sect had formed an alliance with countless sects in the inner and core circles. After their disciples reached a certain level of cultivation, they could freely choose where they wanted to go to. Recently, many Blue Blood sect disciples had left their station and entered the inner circle. Some chose to attach themselves to other sects, while others, like Chen Yu, entered the inner circle alone. It was their freedom to choose, and no one was forced to do so. The Union sects also sent their disciples to the Blue Blood sect to gain experience and cultivate, increasing the strength of the Blue Blood sect. A few days ago, an insect tide appeared, but the Blue Blood sect only treated the insect nest as a treasure trove to earn merit points. They exhausted the life cores in the insect nest to end the battle. In the entire outer circle, the Blue Blood sect station was worthy of being called a giant. With the Blue Blood sect station as the origin point, the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators didn't dare to set foot in a 1,000-kilometer radius. It was said that several myriad Demon Ridge forces near the Blue Blood sect station had recently intended to relocate. There was no other way. If they couldn't survive, what else could they do but relocate? There's no next one. Hearing Tao Zhengyu's question, Lu Yi stood up and stretched. He also wanted to go to the next one, but there were some things he couldn't do. This time, no matter what, he was bullying the weak. It was a little different from when he was in the 9 Heavens realm. Of course, the most important thing was that he didn't know where the Cloud River 9th Order cultivators who besieged him in the hunting ground came from. Otherwise, he could have fought them openly. He only knew where Tan Sheng and Wei Kei came from because of Li Baxian and Xia Qian Qian. There was also a guy who used a saber. People called him Xiao Yang, and he seemed to be from the wild saber sect. His saber cultivation experience seemed to have been settled. Oh, Tao Zhengyu responded obediently. Although he was a little disappointed, he didn't insist on anything. The harvest this time was rich enough. Send junior brother Tao back to the station. Be careful, Lu Yi instructed. Got it. Be careful, responded and summoned a flight-type spirit artifact. She also had her own flight-type spirit artifact, but she usually followed Lu Yi and didn't have a chance to use it. A moment later, Yi and Tao Zhengyu flew off on their flying tools and flew towards the Blue Blood Sect station. The strength Shi and Hupa could display now was at the level of Tianjiu, so they wouldn't encounter any danger in the Spirit Stream battlefield. This was especially true now that the various great sects of Myriad Demon Ridge were on high alert for Lu Ye's arrival, so no master would wander around. But with their strength, even if they really ran into 1 or 2 Heavenly Nine, they could also handle it. Therefore, Lu Yi wasn't worried about Yi and Hupo's safety at all. Lu Yi quickly summoned his own air transportation spiritual artifact and stepped onto it. Then, he leisurely flew toward a certain direction. He wanted to go to the Sky Sword Peak and wait for the Myriad Devil Ridge to send something over. After being busy for so long, it was time to reap the rewards. The agreed time was 10 days, so he wasn't in a hurry. He walked around and looked around, carefree and unfettered. On his side, he was free and unfettered, but many cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge had to suffer. Almost every Myriad Devil Ridge station had received a message from the main sect, telling them to be on guard against Lu Yi. If they found any traces of Lu Yi, they were to immediately retreat to the 9 states. This caused almost all the cultivators in the Myriad Devil Ridge's core station to be on high alert, afraid that the sect exterminating leaf would suddenly come to kill them. This was especially so for the few sects that were closer to the Cloudy Sun sect station. But after waiting for a long time, no one saw any trace of the sect exterminating leaf. After he broke through the Cloudy Sun sect station, he disappeared. 2 days later, Lu Yi arrived at the Sky Sword Peak. A few months ago, he came here once, waiting to receive the safety money from the Myriad Devil Ridge. He originally thought that after leaving the Spirit Stream battlefield, he would never set foot here again. He didn't expect that there would be a day when he would come here again and do the same thing as a few months ago. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. Landing on the Sky Sword Peak, he casually found a flat rock and sat down cross-legged with the mountain plate saber beside him. Looking at the rolling sea of clouds in front of him, Lu Yi suddenly regretted giving the Myriad Devil Ridge such a long time limit. Being in the Spirit Stream battlefield, he couldn't cultivate because his cultivation had already surpassed the Spirit Stream realm. So, even if he breathed in the spirit chi of heaven and earth or swallowed spirit pills, it was useless. Helpless, he could only look for the books that he had taken from Madame Yun and study them. He had read these books more than once, but every time he read them again, he would gain something new. He also learned some interesting spirit runes from the books. However, because these spirit runes weren't on the talent tree, it would take a lot of practice to construct these spirit runes, and there was even a risk of failure. So far, among the spirit runes that Lu Yi had learned from the books, the most useful one for him was undoubtedly the Void Spirit Rune. If it weren't for the Void Spirit Rune, he wouldn't have been able to escape death so many times in the hunting ground, and he wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long under the pursuit of so many experts. This Spirit Rune was a very promising Spirit Rune. Lu Yi had always had a thought that there must be a Void Spirit Rune on the talent tree, but he had never been able to activate it, let alone know which leaves it was on. If he could activate the Void Spirit Rune on the talent tree, it would be much more convenient for him to set up a teleportation array in the future. If that was the case, he only needed to set up a mother array. As long as he was in the range of the teleportation array, he could activate the Void Spirit Rune to return to the mother array at any time. There was no need to bother setting up a child array at all. A simple Void Spirit Rune had the effect of teleportation. The purpose of setting up a formation with it as the core was to make the spirit rune stronger and more stable. Without the restriction of the formation's framework, and without someone to maintain it, the spirit rune would be easily destroyed. He could even construct the void spirit rune on his imperial equipment and use it to develop some new killing methods. Of course, these were all ideas he came up with in his free time. If he wanted to do this, he would have to burn the void spirit rune leaves on the talent tree. While he was reading on the Heavenly Sword Peak, two figures flew out on their artifacts from a certain sect's encampment in the core circle. They were a man and a woman. The man looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He had a dignified appearance and a stalwart figure. At first glance, one could tell that he was a person of high status. The woman was beautiful. From her appearance alone, it was impossible to tell her age. It was not a problem to say that she was 16 or 17, but it was also not a problem to say that she was 24 or 25. She was tall and slender, but what was rare was that her figure was extremely voluptuous. These two were both ninth-order True Lake Realm Masters. They had never thought that they would have the opportunity to enter the Spirit Stream battlefield in this life and shoulder the mission of negotiating with a little Cloud River Realm brat. Previously, the Spirit Sea Realm Masters had discussed this matter and finally chose these two to come. The main reason was that this matter was neither big nor small, so it was not appropriate for a Spirit Sea Realm Master to come personally. If the negotiations fell through, it would be difficult to resolve the situation, and if a fight broke out, there would be no way to end it. Of course, the most important thing was that Lu Yi had the strength of an overlord. Those Spirit Sea Realm Masters really did not have the confidence to defeat him. It would be fine if they won, but what if they lost? They were all Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. If they were pressed to the ground and taught a lesson by a 17 or 18-year-old boy, what kind of scandal would that be? Therefore, after much discussion, it was more appropriate to have a true Lake Realm Master come. Firstly, it would show sincerity, and secondly, a true Lake Realm cultivator would be able to grasp the propriety of the negotiation. The original candidates were two men, but at the last moment, a Spirit Sea Realm Master spoke up and let the woman replace one of them. The basket-like flying spirit artifact was very beautiful. Together with the woman's beautiful face and voluptuous figure, it was enough to attract the attention of 99% of the men in the world. Yun Qingyu stood on the flower basket and looked up at the clouds in the sky, feeling a little annoyed. It was not only the gazes that swept over her from time to time, but also the advice of the Spirit Sea Realm Senior before she left. She did not know where the Spirit Sea Realm Senior got the news, but it was said that the sect Exterminating Leaf did not have any other preferences except for big and round girls. Therefore, she was the original candidate for the negotiation, in hopes that she would perform well. Firstly, her figure was outstanding, which was very much in line with the sect Exterminating Leaf's preferences. Secondly, her age could not be seen from her appearance, so it was easy for people to mistake her for a teenage girl, which would make Lu Yi less wary. Wasn't it normal for a 17 or 18-year-old, hot-blooded young man to lust after beautiful women? There were so many female cultivators in the Wanemo Ridge, so why did he choose her? But since a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator had spoken, how could she refuse? She could only brace herself and go, hoping that she would not suffer too much humiliation. She knew that she would not be able to defeat a Spirit Stream Realm Overlord. As for the rumor that the sect Exterminating Leaf liked big and round girls, it was said that there was proof of this. He had once challenged the Spirit Stream list, and almost all of his opponents, regardless of gender, had died. Only a girl named Bailan had survived, and that Bailan was big and round. He even killed female cultivators, which meant that Lu Yi was not a person who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. But he had let Bailan go, which was naturally thought-provoking. Junior sister Yun, there is no need to be so anxious. That little brat gave a deadline of 10 days, and only 2 days have passed. With our speed, 1 day is enough to reach the Heavenly Sword Peak. Wu Jun, who was following behind Yun Qingyu, said. They did not belong to the same sect, but they had interacted with each other when they were young. Speaking of which, he had also been tempted by this junior sister Yun in the past. After all, in their era, Yun Qingyu was a heavenly girl who made all the young men in the Wanmo Ridge crazy and infatuated. Very few people were not tempted by her appearance. Unfortunately, he was unknown back then and could only watch from afar. Now, he was also a true Lake Realm 9th Order cultivator, and had hopes of reaching the Spirit Sea Realm in the future. He was no longer as immature and humble as he was when he was young, and had a calmer temperament. Although he still felt that this heavenly girl was pleasing to the eye, he would not think too much about her. However, it was rare to be able to travel together with the heavenly girl of his dreams, so it was more or less a joyful thing. Therefore, he was not in a hurry, and even wished to walk slowly. Chapter 544. Yun Qingyue said, although there are still 10 days left, the negotiations have not reached a conclusion. We have to leave enough time for the sects to prepare, so we have to hurry. Saying so, not only did she not slow down, she even sped up. Seeing this, Wu Jun could only helplessly keep up. As they sped along, the heavenly sword peak came into view. Wu Jun suddenly said, actually, we can try to let ghost cultivators kill him. If we can kill him, all our troubles will be solved. But what if we can't kill him? If they couldn't kill him, they would only enrage Lu Ye, and the consequences would be unpredictable. In fact, the Divine Sea Realm cultivators had considered sending ghost cultivators with high cultivation, but it was too risky. Lu Ye was proficient in formations. Even if he stayed on the Heavenly Sword Peak, he would have set up some warning formations around him. The ghost cultivators might not be able to safely sneak up on him. Once he found them, with his overlord-level strength, the ghost cultivators would not have a good ending. It was because of this concern that the Myriad Devil Ridge did not dare to act rashly, and instead sent Wu Jun and Yun Qingyue to negotiate. When they arrived at the sky above the Sky Sword Peak, the two of them looked around and saw the lonely figure sitting on the Spirit Peak. Over there, Yun Qingyue said as she controlled her flying spirit tool to descend. Wu Jun followed closely behind. In a moment, the two landed 10 feet in front of Lu Ye. Looking carefully, the two were secretly shocked. There was no other trace of purple lightning on Lu Ye's body. According to the information they had received, after Lu Ye broke into the New Moon Sect's base and killed more than 50 people, the purple lightning on his body was so dense that it almost condensed. However, when he appeared at the Cloud Sun Sect's base half a day later, the purple lightning disappeared. When he killed again, the purple lightning reappeared. But now, the purple lightning was gone again. This undoubtedly meant that Lu Ye did have the means to suppress the heavenly punishment, but was there really such a miraculous method in this world? While the two were observing Lu Ye, who was studying a book, also looked at them. At first glance, he was attracted by Yun Qingyue, and his eyes lit up. A woman who could be called a heavenly maiden by the men of an era was naturally beautiful. Beautiful things could always make people happy. His gaze shifted downwards, and his eyes became much brighter. This small action naturally could not be hidden from Yun Qingyue's eyes. She felt helpless in her heart. This little guy in front of her was indeed as the rumors said. Fortunately, although he was looking, there was no lust in his eyes, and he quickly looked away. Lu Ye glanced at Wu Jun again and didn't pay much attention to him. What was certain was that these two people were not in the Spirit Stream tier, and were not even in the Cloud River tier. At the very least, they were in the True Lake tier, and could not possibly be in the Immortal Ocean tier. What made Lu Ye slightly suspicious was this woman's age. From her appearance, this woman was not older than him, but how could a True Lake stage cultivator be so young? He could not tell her age from her appearance, so he could only say that this woman took good care of herself. Are you fellow Taoist Lu Ye of the Jade Blood Sect? Yun Qingyue spoke first. The youth in front of her was the only person from ancient times to the present who had single-handedly stirred up the Spirit Stream battlefield and rendered the Myriad Devil Ridge powerless. Therefore, even though Yun Qingyu's cultivation was much higher than Lu Ye's, she did not have the slightest intention of underestimating him. Moreover, she was a gentle woman. Before coming here, she had already seen a portrait of Lu Yi, and the appearance matched. However, she still had to ask. Not only was her appearance beautiful and pleasing to the eye, but her voice was also very soft and pleasant to the ear, like a spring breeze caressing one's ears. She was a true lake stage cultivator, and yet she lowered herself to address Lu Yi as fellow Taoist, showing her sincerity. With her low cultivation and status, she could have called Lu Yi as little friend or even directly called him by his name. "It's me." Lu Yi put away the book in his hand. He secretly wondered why the myriad Devil Ridge had sent such a woman to find him. He quickly came to the conclusion that these two people were not here to deliver the safety money. "What evidence do you have to prove that you are Lu Yi?" Wu Jun suddenly asked. Before coming here, he had already discussed it with Yun Qingyu. Between the two of them, one would play the bad cop, while the other would play the good cop. Negotiations were always like this. This was also the reason why the myriad Devil Ridge had chosen two people to come here. If both of them were easy to talk to, then there would be no point in negotiating. They would just agree to whatever the other party said. Therefore, one of them had to play the bad cop, so as to show the other party's sincerity and make it easier to bargain. Wu Jun did not have any subjective malice towards Lu Yi. The difference in cultivation was obvious. However, as a cultivator of the myriad Devil Ridge, Lu Yi's actions made him feel like he had a common enemy. Naturally, he would not be too polite with his words. "What proof do you want?" Lu Yi did not believe that these two people had not seen his portrait or video before coming here. Wu Jun said, "I heard that Lu Yi has a small white beast by his side that never leaves his side. I don't seem to have seen it. It's not here." Yi wanted to send Tao Zhengyu back to the encampment, so Hupa had to come along. A spirit and a Yao were born together, so they could not be separated too far. Cloud River cultivators barge into the spirit stream battlefield. After killing someone, they will be punished by heaven's secrets. Soul-extinguishing divine lightning is wrapped around them, but I don't see any traces of it. How can you prove that you are Lu Yi? Wu Jun took advantage of the situation to pursue. No matter what, he had to show Lu Yi his strength. He had to let Lu Yi know that the myriad Devil Ridge was not a soft persimmon that he could bully as he pleased. Most importantly, Wu Jun wanted to know what method Lu Yi used to suppress heaven's secrets punishment. If he could figure this out, then any price would be worth it. Whoosh! A light sound rang out as the mountain pan saber was unsheathed. The saber flashed as three crescent-shaped saber lights slashed out towards Wu Jun. Wu Jun did not expect Lu Yi to attack him. Seeing the three saber lights slashing towards him, his expression froze. He immediately circulated his spiritual energy and blood to protect his body. He was a body cultivator, and a true lake stage body cultivator at that. He had already surpassed the stage of relying on spirit tools to protect himself. His own body was his strongest defense. With three muffled sounds, Wu Jun's body flashed with spiritual energy. He was forced back a few steps by the three saber lights before stabilizing himself. His expression immediately turned serious. Even Yun Qingyu, who was watching from the side, revealed a shocked expression. Only now did she understand that the rumors were true. Lu Yi really did have the strength of an overlord. Those three saber lights had already exceeded her understanding of the strength that a spirit stream stage cultivator could display. "Can you prove it now?" Lu Yi slowly sheathed his saber. Wu Jun did not say a word, but his heart was filled with shock. Although it was only three saber lights, it was enough for him to see the big picture. If it was a real life or death battle, with the strength that he could display now, he would not be able to last more than 3 moves against Lu Yi. The younger generation would surpass the older. "Fellow Taoist Lu, please calm down. Senior Martial Brother Wu and I have indeed never seen fellow Taoist Lu before. Moreover, today's matter is of great importance. Senior Marshal Brother Wu is just being cautious and has no ill intentions. Saying so, she gracefully bowed towards Lu Yi. Snow Feather Sect's Yun Qingyue greets fellow Taoist Lu. Wu Jun also unwillingly cupped his fists and said in a muffled voice, Wind Cloud Manners. Wu Jun, Lu Yi had seen Snow Feather Sect and Wind Cloud Manor on the 10-point map. Both were first-grade sects, one from Thunder Prefecture and the other from Serene Prefecture. These were all marked on the 10-point map. Lu Yi nodded slightly and returned the greeting, Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi. Although they were in different camps, the other party was still a true lake stage expert. Since the other party took the initiative to greet him, he could not be rude. What business do the two of you have here? You don't look like you're here to deliver something, Lu Yi said bluntly. Yun Qingyue said, to be honest, the Divine Sea Realm cultivators are still discussing whether to agree to fellow Taoists' request. After all, this has happened once before. At that time, the Myriad Devil Ridge compromised. We thought that fellow Taoist would never return after leaving the Spirit Stream battlefield, but who would have thought that in a mere few months, the same thing will happen again? The Divine Sea Realm cultivators find it difficult to accept. The main reason was that they did not expect Lu Yi to be able to kill people without restraint on the Spirit Stream battlefield after advancing to the Cloud River tier. Under normal circumstances, high-level cultivators would be restrained if they barged into the Spirit Stream battlefield, but Lu Yi was able to do so without restraint. Senior Marshal Brother Wu and I have come here on the orders of many Divine Sea Realm cultivators to discuss a mutually acceptable proposal with fellow Taoist Lu. Lu Ye's gaze was fixed on Yun Qingyue, who responded with a smile. What do you want to discuss? Yun Qingyue said, no matter what, fellow Taoist Lu is bullying the weak this time. There are rules on the battlefield. Fellow Taoist, you forced your way into the Spirit Stream battlefield as a Cloud River tier cultivator and even destroyed the encampment of two major sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge. This is really not right. If the cultivators of the major forces do this, wouldn't the Spirit Stream battlefield be in chaos in the future? What do you think? In this world, besides me, who else has this ability? Yun Qingyue was at a loss for words. This was the problem that the Myriad Devil Ridge could not solve. If this problem was not solved, they would never be qualified to negotiate with Lu Yi. If anyone from the Myriad Devil Ridge wants to copy me, they can do so without any scruples. I have this ability, so I'll set the rules. Those who don't have the ability to do so should obey obediently. As for bullying the weak. In terms of age, most of the cultivators in the core region are older than me. In terms of cultivation, Tianji suppressed my cultivation to the heavenly 9th tier, so the strength I can exert is also at the heavenly 9th tier. How can I be bullying the weak? Yun Qingyue said helplessly, that's what you say, but fellow Taoist's request is really too harsh. The major sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge have already lost a lot of blood the last time. If you do it again, the major sects will definitely not agree. On this point, the Divine Sea Realm cultivators have already reached a consensus. I know that fellow Taoist has encountered in the hunting ground and is feeling depressed and has suffered huge losses. It's understandable for you to make such a request, but fellow Taoist has already destroyed the encampment of two sects and killed many people. Lu Yi stared indifferently at her starry eyes. Fellow Taoist Yun, if you want to talk nonsense, you don't have to. I'll only wait here for 10 days. Chapter 545. On the Heavenly Sword Peak, Yun Qingyue still wanted to persuade him, but Lu Yi raised his hand and stopped her. I've already stated my conditions. It's up to you whether you agree or not. There's no need to discuss anything with me. Wu Jun stepped forward and said in a deep voice, what if we don't agree? Do you really have the guts to attack all the sects in the Myriad Devil Ridge? You think I don't dare? Lu Yi turned to look at Wu Jun. I believe fellow Lu has the ability to do so. Wu Jun stared back at him without flinching. A few months ago, so many myriad Devil Ridge's core sects were destroyed and so many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were killed. Lu Yi did have the ability to do so, but having the ability didn't mean he would do it. If he did, Grand Heaven Alliance wouldn't have an easy time. When the time came, the entire Spirit Stream battlefield would be in chaos. If Lu Yi had any sense, he wouldn't do such a brainless thing. You're right. It's unrealistic to attack all the sects in the myriad Devil Ridge. Lu Yi changed the topic with a leisurely expression. However, there are so many sects in the core sections. Picking 30 or 50 of them won't affect the overall situation. Let's start with Snow Feather Sect and Wind Cloud Mansion. What do you two think? What did we do to provoke you? Yun Qingyue and Wu Jun's expressions changed slightly. If Lu Yi really did this, the myriad Devil Ridge wouldn't be able to deal with him. Compared to the number of sects in the core sects, 30 or 50 of them weren't a lot. Just as Lu Yi said, even if they attacked and occupied them, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. He had already done this a few months ago. At that time, he had attacked and occupied almost 30 sections. If he did it again, who knew which sect he would attack and occupy? If this matter didn't come to a conclusion, every sect in the core sects would feel a sense of urgency. No one dared to bet that their sects would be safe and sound. When the time came, Lu Yi would definitely be willing to pay a price to ensure the safety of their sections. As for Lu Yi saying that he wanted to start with Snow Feather Sect and Wind Cloud Mansion, this was a clear threat. How could Yun Qingyue and Wu Jun not understand? Yun Qingyue felt helpless. It seemed that there wasn't any special effect on her. Although this young man had looked at her when they first met, he didn't treat her well. How could he be so difficult to deal with at such a young age? He hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, please calm down. Senior Marshal Brother Wu and I came here to discuss a plan that would satisfy everyone. How about this? The myriad Devil Ridge is willing to offer a total of 3 million merit points. If fellow Taoist can accept it, I can have someone send it over right now." 3 million merit points worth of resources, even if calculated according to the price of the Tianji treasure vault, it was still a huge sum of resources. It was enough for any cultivator to enjoy for a lifetime. Although Cloud River tier cultivators could obtain more merit points than Spirit Stream tier cultivators, most Cloud River tier cultivators would only have a few thousand or 10,000 merit points. The terrifying number of merit points 3 million was enough to make any Cloud River tier cultivator feel breathless. Lu Ye's expression was calm. Previously, he had received 20 to 30 million merit points worth of goods from the Myriad Demon's Ridge. What was a mere 3 million merit points worth? That was a difference of nearly 10 times. The Myriad Demon Ridge's actions were no different from sending a beggar away. Although it seemed a little unreasonable for him to ask for such an exorbitant price, since ancient times, the two factions had been hostile to each other. Weakening the enemy's capital and strengthening oneself at the same time was something that everyone liked to see. Not to mention, there was a reason for this matter. Lu Yi did not speak, and Yun Qingyue did not speak either. She only waited silently. On the contrary, Wu Jun continued to play the bad guy. He said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist Lu, 3 million merit points worth of goods is already the greatest sincerity that the Myriad Demon's Ridge can express. One cannot be too greedy. Fellow Taoist Yun." Lu Yi ignored Wu Jun and softly called out to Yun Qingyue. Yun Qingyue immediately put on a respectful posture. "Fellow Taoist Lu, please speak. If the Myriad Demon's Ridge really feels that it is difficult, I can also drop my previous proposal. It is convenient for you to give me goods worth 300,000 merit points." Not only was Yun Qingyue not happy, but her expression also became much more serious. "Does fellow Taoist Lu have any other conditions?" The other party suddenly said this, obviously waiting for her to say something. "Give me another golden body token, and this matter will end here." There was definitely more than one golden body token in the world. If Lu Yi could obtain it in the hunting ground, the myriad demon's ridge would definitely have a reserve, but the quantity would definitely not be too much. This was a life-saving trump card for any cultivator. After experiencing the power of the golden body token, Lu Yi naturally could not forget it. Compared to the loss of the golden body token, the 100,000 merit points he spent in the hunting ground to invite the Pillar of Heaven's secrets was almost negligible. Merit points could be slowly accumulated, but the golden body token was something that could only be found by chance. Fellow Taoist Lu must be joking. I have never seen a golden body token in my life. Where would I find one for you? Wu Jun's face was gloomy. And even if there was one, the myriad demon's ridge would not give it to Lu Yi. This thing was useful even for the divine sea realm. After all, it was a protection bestowed by the heavens. Before the time limit was up, no one could break through the protection. Then there is no need to say more. You can choose one of the two options. Wu Jun growled, Lu Ye, we're here to negotiate with you. Don't push your luck. Lu Ye's fingers stroked the mountain pan saber, his eyes slightly drooping as he said, do you two think that if I kill you here, the myriad demon's ridge will find a way to avenge you? Or do you two want to see if I can kill you? Wu Jun and Yun Qingyue's expressions changed and they both became vigilant. What made them rejoice was that Lu Yi did not show any signs of attacking. However, the other party was obviously impatient. If they continued to pester him here, this youth might really attack. If they really died here, it would be a waste. Lu Yi's hands were already stained with the blood of the myriad demon's ridge cultivators. Adding the two of them would not make much of a difference. Thinking of this, Yun Qingyue said, we will report our discussion with fellow Taoist Lu as soon as possible. If there is a result, I will inform fellow Taoist Lu. Saying so, she signaled to Wu Jun and the two of them flew out of Heavenly Sword Peak together. After flying for dozens of li, Yun Qingyue finally let out a long breath. Her chest heaved up and down. In that instant, she had truly felt the aura of death. She never thought that she, a true Lake Realm cultivator, would be so powerless in front of a Cloud River Realm cultivator. Not far from her, Wu Jun's expression was normal, but there was a trace of lingering fear in his eyes. Send the message back and see what the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators choose, Yun Qingyue said. Wu Jun nodded silently. Immediately, the two of them began to pass the message of this discussion to the cultivators in their own encampments. Then, the cultivators in the encampments would pass the message back to the 9 states. However, the two of them knew that the myriad demon's ridge was going to bleed again unless they dared to ignore Lu Ye's threat. However, would anyone dare to ignore Lu Ye's threat? As he said, he would not attack all the encampments. He would only choose 30 to 50 of them. Who would dare to bet that their own encampment would not be the unlucky one? This was not a gamble. The most realistic problem was that Lu Yi was going to a myriad demon's ridge encampment and asking for safety money. If they did not pay, he would attack the encampment. How would they choose? Of course, they would pay. There was no need to even think about it. Compared to what they had to pay in their own encampments, what was a few 100,000, 200,000, or 300,000 merit points worth? In this way, Lu Yi would only need to spend some time to go to each of the encampments. He would also be able to achieve his goal without completely destroying the balance of the Spirit Stream battlefield. The two of them did not have to wait for too long. After less than half a day, they received a message. They both checked. As expected, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators had compromised. Although they were helpless and humiliated, they did not have the right to refuse. However, the Myriad Demon's Ridge also had some requests. The message clearly stated that if Lu Yi did not agree to these requests, the Myriad Demon's Ridge was prepared to suffer losses on both sides. At that time, they would abandon all the encampments and gather the core forces to attack the encampments of the Grand Sky Alliance. This was a complete indiscriminate destruction. It was also the last bit of stubbornness on the part of the Myriad Demon's Ridge. After reading the message, Yun Qingyue sighed. She did not know whether Lu Yiye would agree to these requests or not. Strictly speaking, the Myriad Demon's Ridge was at a disadvantage. If Lu Yiye did not agree, no one could do anything to him. After pondering for a while, Yun Qingyue said, "Senior Marshal Brother Wu, this time I will go by myself. Wait for me here." Now that they had a final plan, there was no need to play the bad guy. Otherwise, the atmosphere would be awkward again. How can that be? What if Lu Yiye wants to attack you? How can you resist? Wu Jun immediately shook his head. Yun Qingyue said, "With his strength, even if you and I join forces, we will not be his match." Hearing this, Wu Jun was filled with grief and indignation, but he could not refute it. "Senior Marshal Brother Wu, wait for me here. I will go and come back quickly. That Lu Yiye does not look like an unreasonable person. Be careful, Junior Marshal Sister. You and I will keep in touch." Wu Jun nodded. Yun Qingyue took out her flower basket spirit artifact and flew out on it. After a while, she arrived at the Heavenly Sword Peak. The young man was still sitting in the same place, holding a book in his hand and studying it carefully. The sunlight pierced through the sea of clouds and shone on the young man's face, giving him a scholarly aura. However, this was an opponent that gave the entire Myriad Devil Ridge a headache. Moreover, he was holding a butcher's knife, ready to cut off a piece of flesh from the Myriad Devil Ridge. Once this knife fell, all the core sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge would not be able to escape. "Fellow cultivator Lu." Yun Qingyue softly called out, and even reached out to stroke the hair by her ear. Her originally beautiful face, at this moment, actually had an additional trace of charm. "Is there a result?" Lu Yiye did not even raise his head. He only looked at the contents of the book, making Yun Qingyue feel powerless. It was as if she had punched cotton. "The Divine Sea Realm cultivators have discussed. We can agree to fellow cultivator Lu's request. However, we also have a request that we hope fellow cultivator Lu can agree to. As long as fellow cultivator Lu agrees to this request, all the things you want will be delivered in 2 days. Speak." The Myriad Devil Ridge hopes that fellow cultivator Lu will not set foot on the Spirit Stream battlefield in the future. Chapter 546. On the Heavenly Sword Peak, Lu Yi closed the book in his hand and raised his head to look at Yun Qingyue. His gaze was calm, but the words that came out of his mouth were resolute and decisive. "Leave. I won't kill you. Also, tell your Divine Sea Realm cultivators that as long as I'm still alive, I will come to the Spirit Stream battlefield every 6 months. I will select 30 sects from the core circle and attack their bases." As he spoke, he slowly stood up and summoned his flying spirit tool. From the looks of it, he was about to take action. Yun Qingyue was shocked and quickly shouted, "Fellow Taoist Lu, please wait. Is there something else?" Lu Yi tilted his head and looked at her. The Myriad Devil Ridge wanted him to not set foot on the Spirit Stream battlefield in the future. This was a condition that he couldn't agree to no matter what. Even though he didn't need to set foot on the Spirit Stream battlefield after reaching the Cloud River realm, and he couldn't threaten the Myriad Devil Ridge with anything from the Spirit Stream battlefield in the future, he could do it twice, but not thrice. Including this time, he had already blackmailed the Myriad Devil Ridge twice. If he did it again, the Myriad Devil Ridge would definitely not compromise and would fight to the death with Lu Yi. However, whether or not he set foot on the Spirit Stream battlefield was his own subjective choice. He didn't need the Myriad Devil Ridge to force it on him. If the Myriad Devil Ridge insisted on this condition, there was no room for negotiation. Looking at Lu Yi, Yun Qingyue felt powerless. In the end, she sighed and said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, we can discuss this." She knew that since they had already reached this point, as one of the parties to the negotiation, they couldn't show any signs of weakness. However, they had no choice now. Lu Yi was about to leave, and if they didn't show any signs of weakness, the 30 Myriad Devil Ridge forces would suffer. Lu Yi even said that he would come every 6 months. Who could endure that? If that really happened, the spirit stream realm cultivators of the core circle wouldn't have a stable place to cultivate in the future. The spirit stream realm was the foundation of every sect. If this foundation was broken, it would affect the foundation and future development of the entire sect. Standing on the spirit boat, Lu Yi looked at Yun Qingyue and didn't say anything. Yun Qingyue pursed her red lips, and only after a long while did she say, "In the future, unless something similar to what happened at the hunting ground occurs again, fellow Taoist Lu must not attack the sect's encampment at the spirit stream battlefield for no reason." Compared to the previous harsh conditions, these conditions were much more lenient. They didn't restrict Lu Yi from entering and leaving the spirit stream battlefield, but correspondingly, they restricted him from attacking the sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Otherwise, something like what had happened at the hunting ground would have to happen. Although it was just a simple sentence, Lu Yi could understand the Myriad Demon Ridge's good intentions. It was obvious that he had not given up on killing him. In the hunting ground, there had been so many Myriad Demon Ridge powerhouses with cultivations much higher than Lu Ye's. In the end, they had even used a secret technique on their tracking plates, leaving him with nowhere to hide. In the end, he had been surrounded by hundreds and thousands of people. Disregarding the grudges between the two factions, the Myriad Demon Ridge had indeed gone too far in this matter. Lu Yi had been lucky enough to survive, but he had paid a great price to come to the Spirit Stream battlefield to seek revenge. No one could blame him for that. But in the future, if the Myriad Demon Ridge tried to target Lu Yi again, they would definitely be more careful and would not give him another chance to retaliate. This is the bottom line of a divine sea cultivator. If fellow Taoist Lu cannot agree, then please leave. After Yun Qingyue finished speaking, she stared at Lu Yi nervously, not knowing if he would agree. Lu Yi calmly nodded, "Sure, is there anything else?" Although he knew that the Myriad Demon Ridge side had not given up on killing him, to be honest, without such tempering on the road of cultivation, it would be too boring. Since stepping onto the road of cultivation, Lu Yi had always been fighting against opponents stronger than him. This was especially true after his identity as a disciple of the Blue Blood sect was exposed. All kinds of suppression had never stopped. It was also through this kind of tempering that he had been able to advance triumphantly and dominate the Spirit Stream battlefield. It was impossible for the Myriad Demon Ridge side to be afraid of attacking him again because of this matter, and he was in no position to ask the Myriad Demon Ridge to stop targeting him in the future. This was something that both of them knew, so there was no need to point it out. Seeing Lu Yi agree, Yun Qingyue let out a long sigh of relief and her expression relaxed a lot. She had always had a benevolent temperament and really didn't want to see too much blood. Also, every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. If fellow Taoist Lu wants to take revenge in the future, please find the right person and don't implicate some innocent sects. The cultivators who had made things difficult for Lu Yi in the hunting ground all had different origins, but one thing was certain, not all the disciples of the Core Circle sects had participated. As a result, Lu Ye's conditions this time targeted all the Core Circle sects, causing many forces to suffer an unexpected calamity. But they couldn't justify themselves. They couldn't say that their disciples didn't participate in the hunting ground incident and ask Lu Yi to be merciful, right? That would be a laughingstock. Of course. Lu Yi nodded, "Is there anything else?" Yun Qingyue shook her head, "There's nothing else." She was slightly dazed. Was it settled just like that? She originally thought that Lu Yi wouldn't agree so easily. She had already prepared many persuasive words, but in the end, none of them came in handy. "If there's nothing else, I have 2 conditions." Yun Qingyue's expression stiffened, and she said nervously, "Please speak, fellow Taoist Lu. In the hunting ground, there's a guy called Xiao Yang who uses a saber. If I'm not wrong, he should be from the Wild Saber sect. I won't go to the Wild Saber sect's encampment, but tell them for me that in addition to 300,000 merit points, I also want 20 sets of saber cultivation experience. Otherwise, I don't mind making a trip." Yun Qingyue carefully noted it down, okay. Saber cultivation experience was not valuable as long as it was not the only copy. Even if it was the only copy, it could be copied. In the Wild Saber sect, there was no lack of saber cultivation experience, so 20 sets could be easily taken out. Also, Wind Cloud Mansion's resources, add 100,000 merit points. Wind Cloud Mansion. Yun Qingyue was speechless. Wasn't Wind Cloud Mansion senior brother Wu Jun's sect? Lu Yi wanted to add 100,000 merit points to Wind Cloud Mansion's resources. This was clearly because he was angry at senior brother Wu Jun's bad attitude during the negotiation. This little guy seemed to be reasonable, but in fact, he was narrow-minded. There's a price to pay for playing bad cop. What do you think, fellow Daoist Yun? Lu Yi leisurely glanced at Yun Qingyue. Yun Qingyue smiled bitterly. It seems that fellow Daoist Lu has already seen through it. It was not a profound method to begin with, so there was nothing she could do even if she was seen through. Yun Qingyue sighed and said, I will report your 2 requests, but before that, I would like to ask you to sign a heavenly mystery contract. Okay. There was no guarantee, so signing a heavenly mystery contract was the best restriction. Yun Qingyue immediately took out the heavenly mystery contract, listed out a series of terms, and handed it to Lu Yi for inspection. Lu Yi carefully read it, and after confirming that there were no hidden traps, he pressed his handprint. Yun Qingyue also represented the myriad Devil Ridge and pressed her handprint. The heavenly mystery contract shone brightly, and the contract was established. After keeping the heavenly mystery contract, Yun Qingyue felt much more relaxed. To be honest, although she was only facing a Cloud River tier cultivator, the burden in her heart was unprecedentedly heavy. Now that the agreement was finally settled, the mission could be considered finished. Then, fellow Daoist Lu, farewell. Yun Qingyue gracefully bowed to Lu Yi, summoned her flower basket spirit tool, and flew away on it. Lu Yi watched her leave. After thinking for a moment, he did not continue reading. Instead, he walked to the side, took out a saber, and chopped down a large tree. He trimmed it flat, then chopped the tree into several sections, and busied himself. Time passed. 3 days later, Lu Yi, who was sitting upright on a rock and reading, suddenly spoke softly, leave the things behind. Whichever sect you belong to can take the wooden tablet. Consider it a return gift from me. When the 10 days are up, I will pay a visit to the sects whose wooden tablets are still here a visit. There was no one in front of him, but in his perception, there were some unfamiliar auras around him. These people were naturally here to deliver supplies, but they were intimidated by his reputation, and did not dare to show themselves for the time being. After hearing Lu Yi's words, they looked a few dozen feet in front of him. There were hundreds of wooden tablets, each carved with the name of a sect, corresponding to a different sect in the myriad Devil Ridge. These wooden tablets were carved by Lu Yi according to the markings on the map, so there was no omission. It was not for convenience, but to deepen his memory. There were so many sects in the myriad Devil Ridge, and through this method, Lu Yi more or less had some memory of the sects in the core region. In the future, if he encountered a cultivator from the myriad Devil Ridge, he could inquire about their sect and match their background. The people in the dark finally understood what Lu Yi meant. After a moment, someone revealed himself. He walked in front of Lu Yi and placed down a storage bag. Then, he took one of the many wooden tablets and fled. With someone taking the lead, soon more people walked out. They silently put down their storage bags and took the wooden tablets that belonged to their own sections. As time passed, more and more storage bags piled up in front of Lu Yi, and fewer wooden tablets were left behind. Every cultivator who came to deliver the goods could see the magnificent pile of storage bags. They all knew that the goods were worth tens of millions of merit points, but no one dared to be greedy. It had not been easy for them to reach an agreement with Lu Yi. If something were to happen at this time, not only would Lu Yi not be able to forgive them, even the myriad Devil Ridge camp would not be able to forgive the sect behind them. At some point, Louis noticed that the wooden tablet of the Wild Blades sect had been taken away. He raised his hand and grabbed the storage bag that was just thrown away. He opened it and found that in addition to many valuables, there were 20 books of saber cultivation experience. Xiao Yang was indeed from the Wild Blades sect. Otherwise, the Wild Blades sect would not have admitted defeat so easily. The last time he went to the Wild Blades sect, he only got 10 books of saber cultivation experience. Lu Yi excitedly flipped through a book of saber cultivation experience. It was a pity that there were no sects in the Haotian alliance that specialized in saber cultivation. Otherwise, he could go to the Haotian alliance to further his studies. He would not have to go through so much trouble to ask for saber cultivation experience. What's more, what Lu Yi gave was definitely not the best. With Lu Ye's current strength and attainments in saber arts, these saber arts cultivation experiences would certainly be of some help to him, but it would be difficult for him to make a breakthrough in saber arts. It would be great if the Haotian alliance could one day attack and occupy the Wild Blades sect. Of course, this was only a dream. The Wild Blades sect was a first-grade sect with a strong foundation. It was not easy to attack and occupy. Chapter 547. Before the 10 days were up, there were only 2 wooden tokens left in the 7 days since Lu Ye's announcement. This meant that there were only 2 sects in the core circle that did not come. The words engraved on these 2 wooden tokens were New Moon sect and Cloud Sun sect respectively. These 2 sects would not come again. Their base had been destroyed and their disciples were dead or injured. Why would they come to deliver supplies to Lu Yi? Lu Yi had expected this and did not mind. He got up and stretched. After several days of rest, he was full of energy. Since the matter at the Spirit Stream battlefield was over, there was no need to stay here any longer. However, before he left, he could take a look at Hua Xi. He wondered how she was doing now. It was about time for her to advance to the Cloud River realm. He took out his spirit boat and flew towards the 10,000 Poisons forest. On the Heavenly Sword Peak, the wind howled, leaving only 2 wooden tokens with different names engraved on them. Lu Yi had seized a great deal of the Myriad Demon's Ridge's resources here twice. Due to that, Heavenly Sword Peak became a thorn in the hearts of many cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge. Many years later, whenever the cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge passed by this place, they would take a detour around it. They would never recklessly step foot on Heavenly Sword Peak. The 10,000 Poisons forest was in the core circle and was not too far from the Heavenly Sword Peak. A day later, when Lu Yi leisurely arrived above the 10,000 Poisons forest, he could not help but be surprised. He found that the 10,000 Poisons forest was different from before. The most obvious change was that the entire 10,000 Poisons forest seemed to have shrunk by a lot. The area that used to be shrouded in poisonous fog was now a safe place. Overall, it had shrunk by at least 30 to 40%. This was the forbidden area of the Spirit Stream battlefield, a place that cultivators were not willing to step into easily. Not only was there a poisonous fog that could kill people, but there were also all kinds of poisonous insects that lived in the poisonous forest. Even the cultivators of Tianjiu were unable to penetrate too deep. Was the shrinking of the 10,000 Poisons forest related to Hua Xi? Lu Yi knew that Hua Xi's cultivation needed to refine the poisonous fog. However, only a few months had passed and the 10,000 Poisons forest had become like this. If Hua Xi was given more time, wouldn't this forbidden area disappear completely? This woman was really terrifying. He went straight into the forest and went deep inside. When he reached the wooden house in the forest, he saw a small courtyard with a tall fence and a tightly shut door. Lu Yi went forward and knocked on the door. "Is anyone home?" There was no response. After probing for a bit, he found that there was no sign of life in the wooden house. Hua Xi is not here. Lu Yi was a little surprised. He thought that Hua Xi had always been cultivating here. He did not expect that she would disappear without a trace. Now, he did not know where she went. Pushing open the door, he walked into the house and looked around. Everything in the house was spotless, which meant that Hua Xi was still living here, but he didn't know what she was doing now. Walking out of the house, Lu Yi thought for a moment and headed to the place where Hua Xi had been cultivating. When she lived here before, Hua Xi didn't cultivate in the house because there was an array set up by Lu Yi. As long as the array was maintained, it could isolate the corrosive poisonous fog, making it inconvenient for her to cultivate. After walking for a short distance, Lu Yi suddenly heard a soft singing voice and the sound of flowing water. This woman seems to be in a good mood. I wonder what she's doing. He retracted his aura and concealed his figure, preparing to scare her. She had been here all by herself for several months without any communication with the outside world. She hadn't sent him any messages either, so it was clear that she didn't know that he had come to the Spirit Stream battlefield. Suddenly appearing in front of her at this time would definitely give her a pleasant surprise. Following the source of the singing voice, Lu Yi passed through a patch of low shrubs and looked up. His expression stiffened. There was a pool there at some point. The pool was not very big, only a few feet in length and width. The water in the pool rippled with an abnormal green color. Just looking at the pool gave off an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It was easy to imagine how poisonous the water in the pool was. Lu Yi did not know how Hua Xi had created this pool of poisonous water. When he and Yi were here, this pool had not been there. It was clearly Hua Xi's work. More importantly, Hua Xi was bathing in the pool at this moment. Her entire body was almost submerged in the pool, and only the area above her neck was exposed. Her two white and tender arms swayed gently on the surface of the water, and occasionally, a few delicate toes floated mischievously on the surface of the water. She was softly humming an unknown song. Just by looking at her current state, Lu Yi could already imagine what she looked like. This. If he was discovered, wouldn't he be treated as a hoodlum and beaten up? He did not expect to see such a scene when he ran over. Just as he was about to quietly retreat, the singing voice suddenly stopped. Immediately afterward, Lu Yi felt a pair of sharp eyes staring at the place where he was hiding. He immediately had an ominous feeling. With a splash, Hua Xi waved her hand and a green water arrow flew out of the pool, aiming at Lu Ye's location with unparalleled precision. Should I hide? Or should I not hide? At this moment, Lu Ye's heart was in knots. If he hid, it would make him look guilty, but if he did not hide, he would definitely be exposed. Before he could make a decision, the water arrow hit his chest. It did not cause any damage, but the water arrow suddenly turned into a green mist and wrapped around Lu Ye's body, breaking his concealment. Then, Lu Yi felt a large amount of gray mist ignite in his innate skill tree. In the pool, Hua Xi, who only had her head exposed, covered her mouth and exclaimed, I was wondering what kind of little beast it was, it turns out to be a beast. She looked very shocked, and words that were even more poisonous than the pool water came out of her mouth. Don't give me that. Lu Yi huffed, besides me, who else can enter this damned place? You already guessed it was me, so stop pretending. This could be seen from the fact that the water arrow did not cause any damage. Hua Xi knew that Lu Yi was immune to poison, so the water arrow's main point was the poison, not its own damage. Of course, if the one who came was not Lu Yi, he would probably be waiting for death at this moment. The poison in the pool water was several times stronger than the poison Lu Yi had experienced in the forest of 1,000 poisons. I don't know, how would I know? Hua Xi pursed her lips and chuckled, reaching out to play with the water, but why are you here? Isn't the Cloud River battlefield fun? Fun, it's too fun. Since his whereabouts had been exposed, Lu Yi simply walked forward to the other side of the pool, squatted down, and scooped up some water. The gray mist on his innate skill tree increased. Considering that his innate skill tree did not have much fuel left, Lu Yi did not dare play around anymore, otherwise, he would definitely be taken advantage of by Hua Xi. Something happened, so I came here. I thought I'd come to see you on the way. So it was just on the way. Hua Xi's expression suddenly became bitter. If someone who did not know the situation saw this, they would probably think that Lu Yi had done something to her and then abandoned her. As she spoke, her hands did not stop moving. Her slender neck, white and tender skin, and some other beautiful things were faintly discernible. Coupled with her wet hair and sorrowful expression, it was truly captivating. If someone said that she did not do it on purpose, Lu Yi would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. Do I look good? Hua Xi's cheeks flushed red. Under Lu Ye's gaze, she lowered her head slightly, looking very shy. Do you want to see more? Lu Yi immediately perked up, can I? Hua Xi's head was still lowered, her voice as soft as a mosquito's, of course not for others, but if it's you, it doesn't matter. As she said this, she gently closed her eyes. Her long eyelashes trembled uneasily, and then she slowly stood up. The dark green pool water slid down her smooth neck, outlining the most beautiful scene in the world. Lu Ye's eyes widened to the size of copper bells. Ha 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 ha, you big idiot. Standing in the pool, Hua Xi, dressed in a dress, laughed and laughed as much as she could, mocking him. Lu Yi painfully closed his eyes. I, who had expectations of this woman, am really a piece of trash. But who would have thought that the woman who was soaking in the pool in such an environment would actually be fully clothed? Lu Yi stood up and turned to leave. Hua Xi shouted from behind, Hey, where are you going? It's none of your business. His heart, which was ready to enjoy the beautiful scenery, was lifted high and then slammed to the ground, shattering into pieces. Do you think I don't care about my face? A moment later, a neatly dressed Hua Xi appeared in the small wooden house. She saw Lu Yi lying on a hammock in the small courtyard, his head resting on his hands as he looked at the sky in boredom. Wrapped in a fragrant wind, Hua Xi walked to Lu Ye's side and leaned over to look at him. Are you angry? What's there to be angry about? Lu Yi rolled his eyes. I'm hungry, go make something to eat. Although the food Hua Xi made didn't look very good, the taste and effect were very good, and they were all very nutritious. Okay. Hua Xi said, her already bent body even lower. Before Lu Yi could come back to his senses, he was suddenly kissed on the forehead. Before she could retreat, Lu Yi grabbed her arm. Hua Xi was puzzled. What are you doing? What are you doing? Aren't you angry? I'm apologizing to you, she said matter-of-factly. Am I a child? Do I need you to kiss me on the forehead? Lu Ye's face was full of resentment. It was clearly a way to comfort a child. Then what do you want? Lu Ye's eyes moved down and stared at her red lips. A trace of panic flashed in Hua Xi's eyes, and her breathing quickened slightly. But soon, she put on an indifferent look and looked at Lu Yi with a smile. Her beautiful eyes were as bright as the stars. Time passed little by little, and the two of them remained motionless in this position. After a long while, Lu Yi released her. Hua Xi jumped back and instinctively sneered, coward. Get over here. Lu Yi flew into a rage. Don't even think about it. Hua Xi chuckled and ran even farther. The soft song sounded again, and Hua Xi's mood was obviously better. In a moment, the small courtyard was filled with the fragrance of food. Chapter 548. Not long after, in the small courtyard, Lu Yi was stuffing himself with food. The gray mist on the innate skill tree was ferocious, and it looked like he would have to replenish it later. Hua Xi sat across from him, occasionally giving him some food. She even said, the world of flowers is mesmerizing, eat more. Lu Yi pretended not to hear. Where are Yi and Hu Pa? Why don't I see them? They went back to the encampment, Lu Yi replied as he took off 2 storage pouches from his waist and casually tossed them onto the table. Hua Xi picked them up and opened them. She said in surprise, there are so many things. Which sect did you rob this time? Each storage pouch contained resources from a first-rank sect. The 2 storage pouches were worth a total of 600,000 merit points. Of course, if these things were sold to the Tianji treasury, the value would be at least halved. Lu Yi raised his hand and drew a circle. All the sects in the core region. Not a single one escaped. Hua Xi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How did they offend you? It's a long story. There's no need to talk about it. As for how he had been chased in the hunting ground and had been forced to use the golden body medallion, he naturally didn't need to tell Hua Xi about it. It would only make her worry for no reason. I don't need these things for my cultivation. If you don't need them, then sell them and get some merit points. When we return to the Cloud River battlefield, they'll be useful. Hua Xi thought for a moment, then nodded. Alright, then I'll accept them. What's up with the poisonous water? Lu Yi asked casually. That's the source of the poison in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons. I accidentally discovered it, so I drew it out. Cultivating like this is much more efficient than simply refining the poisonous mist. It was precisely because he could refine the energy in the pool that the Forest of 1,000 Poisons had shrunk in such a short time. The changes in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons had already attracted the attention of many people, but no one knew what was going on. After all, in the Spirit Stream tier, only Lu Yi could enter and leave this place unscathed. No one else could enter this place. Lu Yi was curious. You're already at the Heaven 9 tier, how can you cultivate? Heaven 9 tier was already at the peak of the Spirit Stream tier. At this tier, unless one reached the Cloud River tier, there was no way to continue cultivating. I have my ways. Hua Xi pursed her lips. You want to refine all of the origin of poison in this place before advancing to the Cloud River realm? Of course. It's rare to have such an environment for cultivation. Naturally, we have to make good use of it. Is there a similar environment in the Cloudy River battlefield? Not really. I'll keep an eye out for you later. It's also fine if you have the Yao core of a demonic beast. Some demonic beasts' Yao cores are extremely poisonous. You might have something like that in the Heavenly Fate treasure trove. When you reach the Cloud River tier, you can go and buy some. I'll keep an eye out for you. Suddenly, something occurred to him, and he asked, have you reached the Spirit Stream list? Hua Xi winked at him playfully. I've been at the top of the Spirit Stream ranking for several months now. Didn't you know? Lu Yi was stunned beyond words. The Spirit Stream champion? You? Don't look down on me. Hua Xi waved 2 fingers in front of him. Lu Yi was certain that Hua Xi had the strength to reach the Spirit Stream list. Back in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons, she had killed quite a few cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge. However, if she had been able to occupy the Spirit Stream list for a few months, it would have been somewhat surprising. Of course, Hua Xi wouldn't joke about something like that with Lu Yi. First, Lu Yi from the Jade Blood sect had occupied the Spirit Stream list for several months. Now, Hua Xi from the Jade Blood sect had occupied the top spot. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it seemed that she would continue to occupy the top spot for quite some time. That was especially true considering that Hua Xi had told the public that she was a medical cultivator. Lu Yi really wanted to know how the cultivators of the 9 Heavens continent were feeling right now. Since ancient times, medical cultivators had rarely been able to reach the top 50 of the Spirit Stream list. However, Hua Xi had actually occupied the top spot. However, after thinking about it carefully, although Hua Xi was a medical cultivator, after receiving the complete legacy, her medical cultivation had become different from that of ordinary medical cultivators. Most medical cultivators would cultivate magic cultivation or some other schools of thought. That was the only way they could protect themselves to a certain degree. However, Hua Xi didn't cultivate any schools of thought. Strictly speaking, she could be considered a poison doctor. Since ancient times, medicine and poison were closely related. However, Hua Xiai, a poison doctor, was completely different from a poison doctor in the general sense. If she wanted to, even her breath could be laced with poison, let alone touch the body. With such a foundation, occupying the top spot of the spirit stream list wasn't a problem at all. The cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge who challenged her didn't even get to see her face before they were poisoned to the point of dizziness. They had no choice but to admit defeat and run for their lives. After several such incidents, no one dared to challenge Hua Xi's position anymore. What the Myriad Devil Ridge wanted to know was where this medical cultivator from the Jade Blood sect was hiding. Up until now, no one had seen her on the Spirit Stream battlefield. She hadn't even appeared in any of the sect's encampments. Although Lu Yi was a nightmare for the Myriad Devil Ridge, he would at least show his face in public and stir up trouble. However, Hua Xiai was simply an unsolvable mystery. Looking at the entire Spirit Stream battlefield, the Jade Blood sect from the War Province had been like a huge mountain pressing down on the heads of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators for the past 2 years. It was so heavy that it made it difficult for them to breathe. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi stretched lazily with a satisfied expression on his face. As Hua Xiai cleaned up the dishes, she asked, "Are we leaving?" You should come to the Cloud River battlefield soon. I'll wait for you there." "Okay. By the way, do you still have the myriad poison pill you gave me last time? That thing could display great killing power under certain circumstances. For example, in the Myriad Beast Realm's secret realm, if Lu Yi hadn't taken out the myriad poison pill, Fierce Niu wouldn't have been able to deal with him. Although this thing could kill both friend and foe, if used well, it could also turn the tables in an adverse situation." "I do." As Hua Xiai spoke, she reached into her clothes and pulled out a handful of green myriad poison pills that still had her body temperature. Lu Ye's eyelids twitched as he looked at the dozen or so myriad poison pills. He didn't stand on ceremony with Hua Xiai and took 3 of them and put them in his storage space. "Take more. I can refine them at any time," Hua Xiai advised. "No need. A few for self-defense is enough." Although Hua Xiai didn't know what price she had to pay to refine these myriad poison pills, she was certain that these things weren't easy to come by and naturally couldn't be squandered. "Let's go." Lu Yi turned around and waved his hand. He took out his spirit boat and stepped onto it. Spirit energy surged and it soared into the sky. Hua Xiai stood in place and looked up. Suddenly, she raised her hand to her mouth and shouted, "Husband, be careful." On the spirit boat, Lu Yi staggered and almost fell. He lowered his head and glared fiercely at Hua Xiai, only to see her smiling beautifully. After watching Lu Ye's figure disappear, Hua Xiai stretched her body, revealing her beautiful and graceful figure. She was going to be alone again. However, in the past few months, she had become familiar with this kind of life and didn't feel too lonely. However, she should still work hard on her cultivation and try to completely refine the source of deadly poison so that she could meet up with him at the Cloud River battlefield. In any case, she was a medical cultivator. If she stayed by his side, she could help him treat his injuries. The sky was clear and the scenery was picturesque. Lu Yi sped along. The journey was calm and peaceful. He left the core circle, entered the inner circle, and then circled around the outer circle before returning to the encampment. Actually, after leaving the 10,000 Poison Forest, he could have used the nearby Tianji Business Alliance's Tianji Pillar to directly teleport back to the encampment. However, that would have cost him a lot of merit points. Since he had nothing to do recently and couldn't enter the Cloud River battlefield, he didn't waste the money. 3 days later, Lu Yi arrived at the encampment of the Jade Blood sect. Just as he entered the protective array, he heard the crisp cry of an eagle. He looked up at the spirit mountain not far away and saw a familiar figure standing there, looking at him. Xiao Hui had returned. Lu Yi set up his spirit tool and flew towards the spirit mountain. He arrived at the eagle's nest and fed Xiao Hui a few fish he caught from the moon lake, teasing it for a while. After a while, he entered the Tianji Hall. Along the way, there were many disciples who respectfully bowed to him. Some were from the sect, while others were from other sections. There were even female cultivators with fiery personalities who took the initiative to talk to him. They looked at Lu Yi with eyes full of worship. After sending away those cultivators, Lu Yi stood in front of the Tianji pillar and placed his hand on it. His mind connected to the Tianji treasure house. He wanted to sell some things to the Tianji treasure house so that he could ensure that he had enough merit points to use. This time, he received a total of 20 to 30 million merit points from the 10,000 Devil Ridge. Even if he sold everything to the Tianji treasure house at a 50% discount, he would still be able to obtain 10 million merit points. However, Lu Yi naturally wasn't going to sell everything. He only needed enough merit points to use temporarily. The rest would be left to his second senior sister to ensure the development of the sect. Especially with his second senior sister's Spirit Sea stage cultivation, she would need a huge amount of resources to cultivate. When cultivators were in the Spirit Stream stage, they could cultivate in the Spirit Stream battlefield. When they reached the Cloud River stage, they could enter the Cloud River battlefield. However, when they reached the True Lake stage, there was no specific battlefield. Lu Yi wasn't particularly clear about how True Lake stage and Spirit Sea stage cultivators cultivated. However, it was said that it was related to a sect's heritage. The stronger the sect's heritage, the faster the True Lake stage and Spirit Sea stage cultivators' cultivation. Therefore, in the entire 9 continents, those powerful sects had generations of powerhouses. On the other hand, those weaker sects could only slowly accumulate and develop, waiting for the day when they could leap over the Dragon Gate. With Shui Yuan's talent, she was already qualified to reach the Spirit Sea stage. However, until half a year ago, she was still a True Lake stage 9th order cultivator. It wasn't that she didn't have enough talent. It was just that the Jade Blood sect was too weak and didn't have enough resources to support her cultivation. However, with the rise of Lu Yi, the Jade Blood sect's good days had arrived. Back then, Lu Yi pulled together a Grand Heaven Alliance army in the inner circle and fought everywhere. He forced the 10,000 Devil Ridge to compromise and contribute a batch of resources to calm the situation. Chapter 549. That batch of resources was split among many Grand Heaven Alliance sects, but because of Lu Ye's contribution, the Jade Blood sect took the majority. It was also because of that batch of resources that Shui Yuan was able to step into the Divine Sea realm. But at that time, the sect had to continue to develop, so Shui Yuan did not dare to use too many resources. However, as Lu Yi maneuvered in the core circle and extorted 20 to 30 million worth of resources from the various sects in the core circle, Shui Yuan did not have too many restrictions on using resources for cultivation. It was foreseeable that with another batch of resources, Shui Yuan's cultivation would get higher and higher. After all, in the entire Jade Blood sect, only she and the sect master were in the Divine Sea realm. The sect master did not need to cultivate anymore. If Shui Yuan was willing, she could pour the entire sect's resources on herself. This was an advantage that no Divine Sea realm cultivator could have. Lu Yi was only in the Cloud River realm now, so he did not need to think too deeply about the future. It would not be too late to think about it after he reached the True Lake realm. Inside the Tianji treasury, Lu Yi was picking and choosing from his storage space, selling some things that he and the sect could not use for the time being. His contribution points were increasing at an extremely impressive rate. He only stopped when he reached the 300,000 mark. Close to 300,000 merit points was enough for him to use. Even if he encountered any danger in the future, he could invite the Tianji pillar to escape. But then again, inviting the Tianji pillar did not guarantee that he would be able to escape from danger. In the hunting ground, he was protected by the Golden Body Token, so the Thousand Demons Ridge cultivators could not do anything to him. Without the Golden Body Token, even if he invited the Tianji pillar, he might not be able to get close. Therefore, he could only use this method to save his life if he had enough space and time to move. Then, Lu Yi started to buy the earth core fire and devoured it one by one. The fuel for the talent tree needed to be replenished quickly. In the past, he only knew that the talent tree could burn poison. Now, he knew that the talent tree could even burn the soul-extinguishing lightning. In the future, he might be able to burn something else. As time passed, the earth core fire was devoured one by one. What surprised Lu Yi was that the leaf on the talent tree did not react at all. Only after devouring close to 200 earth core fire did a leaf on the talent tree start to show signs of burning. Lu Yi guessed that his encounter this time had caused the talent tree to feel a sense of crisis. Therefore, the earth core fire that it had swallowed before had been stored as fuel. Only when it felt that its reserves were sufficient did it begin to change the leaves. It had been a long time since he had obtained a new spirit rune from the talent tree. Lu Yi was naturally curious about what kind of spirit runes he would obtain next. Therefore, he continued to purchase earth core fire to devour. Lu Yi bought another 100 or so, and when he wanted to buy more, he was surprised to find that the earth core fire was gone. This caused him to be stunned. It turned out that there was a limit to the amount of earth core fire in the Tianji treasury. He had always thought that there was an inexhaustible supply of these items in the Tianji treasury. Thinking about it carefully, Xiaochun realized that he had taken things for granted. The items in the Tianji treasury did not appear out of thin air. All the treasures had a specific origin. The most popular rumor was that the items in the Tianji treasury were closely related to the Tianji Business Alliance. This was because someone had once sold an item to the Tianji Business Alliance. In the end, they discovered traces of the existence of that item in the Tianji treasury. Thinking about it this way, the earth core fire should have been collected by cultivators from some place and then sold to the Tianji treasury. Lu Yi was not clear on how this item was collected. The people who used it were either refining pills or refining tools. Therefore, the amount of earth core fire purchased would not be too much. Therefore, there had always been a large amount in the Tianji treasury. But when it came to him, he would purchase tens to hundreds of earth core fire every time. This time, it was even more ridiculous. He had bought hundreds of earth core fire in one go. Without the earth core fire, there should be other types of fire. Lu Ye's mind stirred. He used the Tianji treasury to search for what he wanted. A moment later, many items related to fire appeared in his field of vision. However, these items were all different. Most of them were pill fire. Pill fire was not a flame used to refine pills. Instead, it was the beast core of a fire-attributed demonic beast. Each beast core was like a burning flame. The price was also not the same. The lowest was 500 to 600 merit points, while the highest was thousands to tens of thousands of merit points. Lu Yi also saw something called the extreme frost ice flame. This should be a strange flame. Just by looking at it, it gave people an extremely cold feeling. The flame was also a deep blue color. This thing was ridiculously expensive. It was worth 180,000 merit points. He could not help but think of the Phoenix True Fire he had obtained in the Land of Fire. If this thing was placed in the Tianji treasury, it would probably be worth a lot. It might even be worth more than the extreme frost ice flame. This was because Lu Yi had obtained these things for his talent tree to devour. However, other people could use these strange flames to cultivate some special secret techniques. Naturally, their value could not be mentioned in the same breath. After devouring the Phoenix True Fire, there was an additional Fire Phoenix Spirit mark on his talent tree. Lu Yi wanted to know what changes would happen to his talent tree if he devoured the extreme frost ice flame. However, the price of 180,000 merit points dispelled the thought in his mind. Even if he had the capital to take out this amount of merit points, he still decided against it after some consideration. After all, he could not devour the extreme frost ice flame and obtain a similar spirit mark. There was no such spirit mark in the world. If he did not obtain the corresponding spirit mark, it would not be worth it to devour it. Lu Yi bought all the flames below 1,000 merit points. Only then did he stop. Out of nearly 300,000 merit points, he had spent 100,000 of them in one go. Money came and went quickly. This was only the Cloud River stage. When he reached the True Lake stage and the Spirit Sea stage, he would need to spend the most merit points. On the path of cultivation, talent was important. However, without sufficient financial support, it would be difficult to increase one's cultivation rapidly. The talent tree was still devouring the flames. However, Lu Yi was prepared to leave some for future use in case the talent tree ran out of fuel. As he immersed his mind, the leaves on the talent tree started to burn as the flames were devoured one by one. Lu Yi could not help but look forward to it. Compared to the spirit marks he had learned from books, the spirit marks on the talent tree were the ones he could use as he wished. They could often increase his strength in disguise. He continued to search in the Tianji treasury. He wanted to find a spirit tool that could store spirit power. He had used the Fire Phoenix spirit mark twice. The two experiences were still fresh in his mind. It had to be said that sometimes, this spiritual pattern could play a decisive role. However, if one wanted to use this spiritual pattern, one would have to pay a huge price. Putting aside the after effects, as long as the situation was safe, he could slowly recuperate. However, the amount of spirit power needed to support the activation of this spirit mark was frighteningly large. This problem had to be solved. Previously, he had used the spirit storage spirit mark to complete the construction of this spirit mark. However, if he had a spirit tool that could store spirit power, it would not be so troublesome. He could store spirit power in the spirit tool in advance and use it when he needed it. There were all kinds of treasures in the Tianji treasury. There should be a lot of spirit tools that could store spirit power. As expected, after a while, hundreds of spirit tools that could store spirit power appeared in Lu Ye's vision. They were all different in quality and price. Even their shapes were strange. Lu Yi picked and finally chose a ring. This item was convenient to wear and difficult to lose. Moreover, its quality was not bad. It was a supreme-grade spirit tool. In the category of spirit tools, the quality mainly depended on how many restrictions were built when the spirit tool was forged. Under 9 restrictions, it was a low-grade spirit tool. From 9 to 18 restrictions, it was a medium-grade spirit tool. From 18 to 27, it was a high-grade spirit tool. From 27 to 36, it was a supreme-grade spirit tool. Different quality naturally led to different prices. Generally speaking, supreme-grade spirit tools could be bought from the Tianji treasury for 1,500 to 2,000 merit points. The difference was not too big. From Lu Ye's point of view, a mere 1 to 2,000 merit points was naturally nothing. He could obtain it easily. However, for most Cloud River tier cultivators, 1 to 2,000 merit points was already a lot, especially when every cultivator had more than one spirit tool. As one's cultivation level continued to increase, spirit tools would also need to be replaced. Therefore, cultivators spent a lot of merit points on spirit tools. Of course, one could also use spirit stones to buy spirit tools from the Tianji Business Alliance. However, the prerequisite was that one had to have enough spirit stones. Moreover, if one really wanted to use spirit stones to buy spirit tools, it would be more expensive. The spirit storage ring that Lu Yi chose was a little too expensive. It cost a full 4,000 merit points. Firstly, spirit storage spirit tools were a special kind of spirit tool. They were not weapons that cultivators used to kill others. This kind of spirit tool was more expensive than ordinary spirit tools because there were not many of them. Secondly, this was the smallest spirit storage spirit tool. It was the most convenient to carry around, so it was naturally more expensive. Lu Yi wore the spirit storage ring on his finger. It was very suitable, and it would not affect him when he wielded his saber. Moreover, it had the ability to absorb and store the spirit power that drifted around the surface of a cultivator's body. Therefore, even if Lu Yi did not actively inject spirit power into it, as long as he wore it for a long time, it would be able to store enough spirit power. When Lu Yi needed to use it, he could directly extract spirit power from it. It was much more efficient than using spirit pills to recover his body. He had bought everything that he needed to buy and sold everything that he needed to sell. Lu Yi checked the battlefield imprint on his body. On the column of merit points, there were 193,643 merit points. Now, it was time for the main event. The reward from the hunting list of the hunting ground. After returning from the hunting ground, Lu Yi had not bothered to deal with this matter. Instead, he had charged into the spirit stream battlefield as soon as he had recovered. Now, he finally had the time. When the hunting ground had closed, the Tianji Business Alliance had bestowed a golden imprint on the back of Lu Ye's hand. With this imprint, Lu Yi could use any of the Tianji pillars to connect to the Tianji treasure trove and obtain his reward from the Tianji treasure trove. Chapter 550. The reward for first place on the hunting list was what Lu Yi was looking forward to the most. After all, it was a reward that could directly increase his cultivation. For the current him, nothing was more important than this. In the Tianji treasure house, Lu Yi immersed himself in connecting with the golden mark on the back of his hand. In the next moment, his vision blurred and he appeared in a secret room. The secret room wasn't big and there was only a table in the middle. There was nothing else on the table except for two boxes, one big and one small. They looked extremely simple. Each box had a golden mark on it, similar to the one on the back of Lu Ye's hand. This mark looked like a golden octagonal plate and there was nothing special about it. Walking forward, he raised his hand and opened the bigger box. In an instant, the secret room was filled with a dazzling golden light. When the golden light disappeared, Lu Yi looked down at the box and saw golden spirit sticks imprinted in his vision. He took them out one by one, no more, no less, just 9. Including the 2 golden spirit sticks he already had, he now had a total of 11 golden spirit sticks. He also had some spirit sticks of other grades. It was unimaginable that a third-order Cloud River Realm cultivator could have so many spirit sticks. Since ancient times, no cultivator in the 9 states had obtained so many spirit sticks at once with such a low cultivation. If it weren't for the reward of the hunting list, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to do this. The main thing was that the last Fire Phoenix Spirit Rune had killed many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators, allowing him to reach the top of the hunting list in one fell swoop. With so many spirit sticks in hand, Lu Yi estimated that if he used them all, it wouldn't be difficult for him to reach the 5th Order Cloud River Realm. Of course, these 9 golden spirit sticks weren't all his. He still needed to share them with Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan, so he could only get 3 of them. Putting away the spirit sticks, Lu Yi looked at the other, smaller box. The big box contained golden spirit sticks and the small box should contain the legendary Grade A Spring Spirit. Although Lu Yi had owned a Grade C Spirit land, he had never seen what a Spring Spirit looked like. He raised his hand and opened the small box, but nothing appeared. Looking down, he frowned. Lying in the box was a white and plump cocoon-like thing. It was about the size of a palm, and it seemed to be alive. Lu Yi could feel that it was breathing, and as it breathed, its body was sometimes corporeal and sometimes illusory. This was a Grade A Spring Spirit. It was a little different from what he had imagined, however, since this was a gift from the heavens, it shouldn't be a problem. It was said that as long as one had this item, no matter where one was in the Cloudy River battlefield, one could use it to create a Grade A Spirit Spring, and then create a Grade A Spirit Land. However, this was only limited to the Cloudy River battlefield. The Spirit Springs were unique to the Cloudy River battlefield. There were no other places like this, so the Spirit Springs could only be used in the Cloudy River battlefield. Lu Yi raised his hand and picked up the white and plump Spring Spirit. It felt surprisingly good to the touch. But how was this thing supposed to be kept? It seemed to be alive, so he didn't know if it would be a problem to keep it in his storage bag. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi looked at the small box in front of him. He put the spring spirit back and reached out to grab the box. This box was also a gift from the heavens. Although he didn't know what it was made of, it was definitely something good. He could take it with him. He might be able to use it to store something in the future. The result surprised him. No matter how much strength he used, the box didn't move at all. He tried the big box beside it, and it was the same. He couldn't take this box. The heavens were too stingy. Lu Yi helplessly gave up. He took out the spirit beast bag and kept the spring spirit inside. The storage bag couldn't store living things, but the spirit beast bag could. After collecting the rewards from the hunting list, Lu Ye's mind moved slightly, and he left the heaven's secret treasure house. When he came back to his senses, he stood in front of the heaven's secret pillar. There were many disciples gathered around him, and when they saw him open his eyes, they all bowed. Lu Yi responded, and said a few words of encouragement to everyone. Only then did he use the heaven's secret pillar to return to the Jade Blood sect. Hoopa sensed Lu Ye's return, and immediately rushed in from outside, nudging him with his head. "Where's Yi?" Lu Yi asked. Hoopa raised his head and gestured in a certain direction. Lu Yi knew that Yi was cultivating with the sect master. Yi was a Dharma cultivator, and so was the sect master. Naturally, they were easy to teach. Compared to Lu Yi could be considered the sect master's last disciple. Lu Yi didn't disturb them. He went straight to Shui Yuan's residence. When he found Shui Yuan, he took out all the resources he had collected from outside. Shui Yuan was so shocked that she couldn't speak. So much again. The scene in front of her was familiar. A few months ago, Lu Yi had brought back such a large amount of resources. She didn't expect that in just a few months, he would bring it back again. When Lu Yi entered the Spirit Stream battlefield, he said that he was going to take revenge. But looking at the situation now, it wasn't revenge at all. He was going to restock. They had been defeated by the same person twice. She wondered how the myriad Devil Ridge was feeling right now. "Senior sister, the days ahead will get better and better. You don't have to be thrifty in your cultivation. Right now, you and the sect master are the only two spiritual sea realm cultivators in the sect. The sect master is old, and there are some things he can't do. In the future, the sect will have to trouble you." Shui Yuan nodded. "I understand. You, on the other hand, have worked hard." Although Lin Ming didn't know what Lu Yi had done to cause the myriad demon ridge to compromise once more, if there were no surprises, there would definitely be some fighting and killing. Otherwise, how could such a large faction compromise unless they were forced to the point of no return? "Senior sister, take your time. I'll take my leave first." With that, Lu Yi took out his spirit artifact and flew to the sky, heading straight for the green bamboo peak. Looking at the mountain of resources in front of her, Shui Yuan smiled and shook her head. It was another busy and fulfilling day. Her sect's treasury was almost full. In the bedroom of the green bamboo peak, Lu Yi divided the spirit stick in his hand into two. One had 6 golden spirit sticks, which were for Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan. There was also a set of 5 golden spiritual sticks, 1 purple, 1 blue, 2 green, and 4 white. Apart from the golden spiritual sticks, most of the others were spoils of war obtained from killing enemies in the hunting grounds. There were also some that were obtained from opening the lot box. He wasn't in a hurry to use these spirit sticks to cultivate because Yi wasn't here. When Yi was free later, they could cultivate together to improve their strength together. He continued to take out all kinds of flames for the talent tree to devour. As time passed, the leaves on the talent tree burned one by one. Lu Yi didn't stop until there were only 30 earth core fire left. He left a little earth core fire in case he needed it in the future, in case the talent tree ran out of fuel. He began to check the spirit inscriptions on the talent tree's leaves. Just like before, most of the leaves didn't bear complete spirit inscriptions, but some special embedding methods. These things were very useful to Lu Yi. It could be said that they were the foundation of Lu Ye's improvement in the Tao of spirit inscriptions. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enough if he only mastered the construction of spirit inscriptions and didn't know how to embed them. Spirit inscriptions could be used alone or with the help of a formation. If he used a formation, he would need to use this embedding method. Strictly speaking, spirit inscriptions and formations were complementary to each other. It took about 2 to 4 hours for Lu Yi to finish checking all the burning leaves. There were a total of 4 new spirit inscriptions. Moreover, each spirit inscription was more complicated than the previous ones because there was more than one leaf that bore them. For example, the defense and sharpness spirit inscriptions that Lu Yi first obtained were the most basic spirit inscriptions. The construction wasn't complicated and only one leaf was needed to bear all the information. However, some complicated spirit inscriptions couldn't. For example, the void spirit inscriptions were carried by dozens of leaves. The fire phoenix spirit inscriptions were even more exaggerated. If the outlines of the leaves that bore it were linked together, it would look like a fire phoenix squatting on the talent tree. The more complicated a spirit inscription was, the more leaves it needed to bear. Out of the 3 types of spirit tattoos he had obtained this time, some carried at least 3 to 8 leaves, while some carried at least 3 to 4 leaves. This meant that constructing them was much more difficult than constructing basic spirit inscriptions like defense and sharpness. Trapped beast. Fog. Haze. Sky restriction. These were the 4 new spirit inscriptions. Lu Yi had seen every type of spiritual inscription in books. Among them, he had even set up the beast-trapping spiritual inscription in the hunting ground. This spiritual inscription was also a practical type of spiritual inscription that he had learned from books in addition to the void spirit inscription. The confinement array he had arranged before used the beast-trapping spirit inscriptions as its core. In the hunting ground, he had been able to stall the pursuit of a 9th-order Cloud River Realm Master twice and escape with his life. The huge role of this spirit inscription was self-evident. However, learning it from books and activating it from the talent tree were 2 different things for Lu Yi. The self-taught spirit inscriptions had a risk of failure and were not very efficient, but the spirit inscriptions from the talent tree could be used at will. Using these spirit inscriptions to arrange a confinement array would be much more efficient. As the name implied, the fog spirit inscriptions could create a dense fog. The more energy it consumed, the denser the fog would become. These spirit inscriptions were specially used to arrange arrays. With the fog spirit inscriptions as its core, a bewildering array could be arranged. As long as the arrangement was delicate enough and supplemented by some other means, it could completely confuse the enemy. The mirage spirit inscriptions and the fog spirit inscriptions had the same effect, but what they created was not fog, but some illusions, achieving the effect of making the illusion real. Similarly, these spirit inscriptions could also be used as the core of a spirit array to arrange an illusion array. If the fog and the mirage spirit inscriptions were combined, it would be a proper illusion array. As for the sky restriction, as the name implied, it had the power to prohibit flying in the air. If it was arranged with this as its core, it would be a sky restriction array. The 4 spirit inscriptions did not improve Lu Yi's strength much, but it gave him more options in array Tao. Lu Yi could not help but have a strange feeling in his heart. Last time, he got 4 spirit inscriptions from the talent tree, and as a result, he went further and further on the road of array cultivation. This time, he got 4 spirit inscriptions, and went further and further on the road of array cultivation. He did not know what spirit inscriptions he would get next time. Chapter 551. Leaving the Cuizhu Peak, he went straight to the Mingxin Peak. On this trip back, he had yet to pay his respects to Madame Yun. Furthermore, it was time for him to get a new batch of books. The books that he had taken from Madame Yun the last time, he had read them over and over again. He had already memorized them thoroughly. The Mingxin Peak was always so peaceful. Although some disciples of the Jade Blood sect could freely enter and leave the sect and station, no one dared to set foot on the Mingxin Peak at will. Only Lu Yi could come here at any time without notice. When he arrived at the Mingxin Peak, he met Madame Yun under the guidance of the mute maid. Lu Yi saluted respectfully. Lu Yi respected Madame Yun very much. Although he embarked on the path of spiritual tattooist because of the talent tree, strictly speaking, Madame Yun was his real guide on this path. Although they were not master and disciple in name, they were master and disciple in reality. Madame Yun was undoubtedly very satisfied with Lu Ye's comprehension and talent. She even had the idea of accepting Lu Yi as her disciple, but she had to give up for some reason. Even so, Madame Yun didn't hide anything from Lu Yi. She really regarded him as her disciple and taught him everything she knew. In the hall, Madame Yun tested Lu Ye's recent cultivation of spiritual tattoos as usual. Lu Yi answered her questions one by one and demonstrated them. Although he didn't get any praise from Madame Yun, from the look in her eyes, he knew that she was very satisfied with Lu Ye's growth in spiritual tattoos. Then, Madame Yun constructed some complicated spiritual tattoos for him to crack, and Lu Yi completed all of them without any mistake. Search. This game, in which Madame Yun constructed spiritual tattoos and Lu Yi cracked them, was a means to quickly improve a spiritual tattooist's construction of spiritual tattoos. In Madame Yun's words, spiritual tattooists who knew how to construct spiritual tattoos were just copying. Only when they understood how to crack a spiritual tattoo quickly could they really master it. After the test, Madame Yun said with a smile, "Now you can be regarded as a real spiritual tattooist." However, modesty brings benefits and complacency brings harm. Remember not to be arrogant and complacent. Yes, Lu Yi answered respectfully. After thinking for a while, he said, "I want to learn the way of tattooing from Madame Yun." Oh. Madame Yun was a little surprised. "Why do you suddenly want to learn this? You have some attainments in Array Dao, why don't you continue to study Array Dao?" Lu Yi said, "Disciple naturally won't give up on the matter of formation Dao. But apart from this, disciple also wishes to delve into the Dao of inscriptions. Although the sect is still developing, it hasn't been very long, and the disciples' foundations are weak. In the future, when we leave the Spirit Stream battlefield and enter the Cloud River battlefield, there will definitely be some friction. If I can learn the Tao of inscription, I can help them inscribe some spirit marks, and provide them with some assistance." Madame Yun could not help but laugh when she heard this. These should be things that old fart should consider. You only need to focus on your cultivation. The old fart she was talking about was naturally the sect leader. Lu Yi said, "Disciple also wants to do his part. Besides, there's no harm in having more skills. Understanding more things might not be beneficial, but there's no harm in doing so." Madame Yun nodded slightly. "Since you want to learn, then learn. Inscription Master is a branch of spiritual tattooists. You have tattoos on your body, so you should know what tattoos are." Lu Yi nodded. However, being able to construct a spiritual tattoo doesn't mean that you can inscribe this spiritual tattoo on someone else's body. This requires a very exquisite technique and control of one's spiritual power. In addition, it also requires some special materials to assist. These materials are not limited to different beast blood, medicinal herbs, and so on. The materials required for each type of inscription are often different. Since she had promised to teach Lu Yi the Tao of inscription, Madame Yun directly began to explain various common knowledge of inscription to him. Although Lu Yi already understood some things, he still listened attentively. To anyone, being able to listen to the teachings of a top-notch spiritual tattoo expert like Madame Yun was a rare opportunity. And through Madame Yun's explanation, Lu Yi slowly gained a systematic understanding of the Tao of inscription. Only then did he realize that the Tao of inscription was not as simple as he had imagined. However, to Lu Yi, if he wanted to cultivate the Tao of inscription, he had some unique advantages. The control of spiritual power and the strength of his mind were all his advantages. Cultivators of the same level should not be able to surpass him in these aspects. Time slowly passed. Madame Yun taught seriously for a few hours before stopping and calling Lu Yi, "Follow me." Lu Yi stood up and followed her. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the library. Madame Yun swept her gaze over the library. With a wave of her hand, books of varying thickness flew out from the bookshelves around them. There were about a dozen books. She placed these books in front of Lu Yi. These books were written by different inscription masters. They contain their own basic understanding of the Tao of inscription. Take a look. I will teach you tomorrow. Yes. Reading books was not a torture for Lu Yi. Ever since he started cultivating the Tao of Spirit Tattoo with Madame Yun, he had read at least a few hundred books on the Tao of Spirit Tattoo. In the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield, when he was free, he liked to hold a book and study it. This had almost become a habit of his. Lu Yi casually flipped open a book and read it seriously. Madame Yun had already left. After an entire night, Lu Yi finished reading the books. After all, these books were not too profound, so it was not difficult to read them. He also gained a lot in his heart. The next day, Madame Yun came directly to the library and continued to teach Lu Yi more knowledge of the Tao of inscription. This went back and forth. During the day, Madame Yun would teach by word and example. At night, Lu Yi would read books in the hidden study. Her days passed peacefully. Until 10 days later, after testing Lu Yi's theoretical knowledge of the Tao of inscription, Madame Yun nodded in satisfaction. You have more or less understood the foundation of the Tao of inscription. The rest is to get the hang of it. The Tao of inscription is very important in practice, and there is a lot of risk. This is different from other branches of spirit tattoo masters. In any case, inscription could only be effective when it was done on a living person. If an inscription master was not skilled enough and his skills were not exquisite enough, it would be a small matter if the inscription master failed to inscribe. It might even cause some irreparable damage to the target. If that was the case, then things would be troublesome. Before you practice, you need to have a set of tools that belong to you. As Madame Yun said this, she stretched out her hand and a jade box appeared in her palm. She pushed it in front of Lu Yi. This is a set of needles that I used in my early years. I have not used it for many years. Today, I will give it to you. Lu Yi received it respectfully. Thank you, madam. This was a great help to him. If Madame Yun did not give it to him, he would have to find a way to find a set of needles. Perhaps the Tianji treasury would sell it, but it would definitely cost a lot of merit points. Moreover, the quality would definitely not be as good as the set that Madame Yun gave him. When he opened the jade box, he saw 49 needles of different lengths neatly arranged in the box. He casually picked one up and found that the needle was hollow. This was mainly to make it convenient to inject some materials, such as a mixture of beast blood and medicinal herbs. Moreover, not only were these inscription patterns of different lengths, even their softness and hardness were different. Some inscription patterns were incomparably hard, while others were extremely soft. Every needle had its own place to be used. When an inscription master wanted to inscribe an inscription master, he would often need to use many different needles. When practicing inscription, you have to choose some simple inscription spirit inscriptions. Through this practice, you will become familiar with the inscription technique. In the future, when your skills are refined, you will be able to choose more complicated inscriptions. Yes. Lu Yi replied. He then asked curiously, but madam, what should I use to practice? Madame Yun revealed a meaningful smile. The first target of an inscription master's practice is only one person, and that is yourself. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He originally wanted to catch some wild beasts or demonic beasts to practice. Only by practicing on your own body will you be able to accurately grasp the essence of inscription. Only then will you be able to better familiarize yourself with the strength of the needles. After all, the feedback from your own body is the most realistic and clear. When you first practice, don't think of reaching the heavens in a single step and directly inscribe spirit inscriptions. You have to start from yin and yang. Treat it as if you are learning the Tao of spirit inscriptions from the beginning. This disciple understands. Madame Yun smiled. With a wave of her hand, a jade bottle appeared in front of Lu Yi. There is some medicinal liquid in the bottle. Use this to practice. Even if you fail, it won't cause any harm to your body. After a short while, Madame Yun left. Lu Yi looked at the needles and the bottle of medicinal liquid in front of him. After thinking for a while, he lifted his right sleeve and revealed his arm. He picked up a needle with his left hand, dipped it in some medicinal liquid, and quickly and decisively pierced his right arm. He had already memorized the main points of the needle. It had to be fast, accurate, and stable. Moreover, the instant the needle pierced his arm, he had to inject the material dipped in the needle into his body to form a basic element. Every needle could only form one basic element. In other words, if he wanted to inscribe a spirit inscription, he had to insert as many needles as there were yin and yang elements in the spirit inscription. This was undoubtedly a huge test for an inscription master's mind and control of spirit inscriptions. The first needle fell, and as expected, it failed. It was easy for Lu Yi to use spirit inscriptions to activate and construct yin and yang elements. However, the difficulty of using needles to construct yin and yang elements was not ordinary. Madame Yun said that he should treat it as starting from the beginning to practice the Tao of spirit inscriptions. This was not wrong. Lu Yi felt that he was like a beginner who was dabbling in spirit inscriptions for the first time. Everything had to start from the beginning. The first failure, the second failure, the third failure, the fourth failure, fine needle holes continuously appeared on Lu Ye's right arm. There was a faint purple color in the needle holes. That was the color of the medicinal liquid. It wasn't until more than 2 hours later when Lu Ye's needles fell that a foundational element was finally completed. He raised his eyebrows and immediately dipped the needle in the medicinal liquid again. The second needle was inserted. Chapter 552. Lu Yi continued to practice. There was no place to insert needles on his right arm, so he inserted needles on his thigh. His thigh was covered with needle holes, so he moved to his lower abdomen. His physique was strong, and such needle holes had no effect on him. After one night, he could insert needles again. His body, on the other hand, was covered in a purple hue because of the purple medicinal juice. His skill was growing little by little at a speed visible to the naked eye, and Lu Yi could insert more and more basic elements. 2 days later, he could already insert 9 spirit tattoos. This kind of number spirit tattoo was the simplest spirit tattoo. It was only constructed by 9 basic elements. However, although it was also a spirit tattoo, it did not have any special function, so it was usually used by beginners to practice. Lu Yi had practiced this before. This time, he changed the way of inscribing and practiced again. The difficulty was undoubtedly much higher than before. With the first successful experience, he undoubtedly had a deeper understanding and comprehension of the way of inscribing. As time passed, the spirit tattoos that Lu Yi could inscribe became more and more complicated. It had to be said that inscribing was indeed very taxing on the mind. The spirit tattoos that he was inscribing now were only the simplest ones. For something like the void spirit tattoo, there were more than 3,000 basic elements, so he had to insert more than 3,000 needles. There could not be any mistakes or pauses during this period. It had to be done in one go. If the mind was not strong enough, it would be difficult to persist. In the blink of an eye, a few days later, in the hidden study, as Lu Yi inserted the last needle, a tattoo was formed on his right arm. This tattoo was not a number spirit tattoo, but a sharp spirit tattoo that he had first obtained from the talent tree. The shape of the spirit tattoo looked like an arrow cluster. Being able to successfully inscribe such a practical spirit tattoo undoubtedly meant that Lu Yi had already entered the door of the way of inscribing. The rest was to continue practicing and accumulating experience. However, because this tattoo was purely made of medicinal juice, it only looked good and could not exert any power. If it was made with a suitable mixture of beast blood and medicinal juice, it would be a real tattoo. If spiritual power was injected into it, this spirit tattoo could exert a sharp power. Lu Yi let out a long breath. Only now did he feel a trace of fatigue. It had been almost half a month since he entered Bright Heart Peak. During this time, he had not rested. Even if his physique was strong, he could not hold on any longer. It was time to bid farewell to Madame Yun. For a cultivator, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation realm. The way of spiritual tattoos was just a decoration on the road to becoming stronger. Lu Yi had the talent and foundation, but he would not neglect the essentials for that. He took out the books that he had read from his storage space and put them back on the bookshelf. He then looked for some books that he had not read and put them away. The books that he had chosen this time were mostly related to the way of inscriptions. Since he had learned the way of inscriptions from Madame Yun, he would naturally work hard in this area in his spare time. He walked out of the library and met Madame Yun. Knowing the reason for his visit, Madame Yun didn't urge him to stay. She only taught him some knowledge about the Tao of inscriptions before letting him go. Lu Yi bowed and expressed his thanks before leaving. Bathing in the sunlight for half a month, Lu Yi couldn't help but squint. Returning to Jade Bamboo Peak, Lu Yi first took a bath and changed into a clean set of clothes. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. When one's cultivation reached the Cloud River tier, the need for sleep was already very low. When cultivators meditated and cultivated, it was actually a kind of half-rest state. As long as one's cultivation efficiency was high enough, they would be full of energy. However, eating and sleeping were human nature. This was hard to erase no matter how high one's cultivation was. Lu Yi was awakened by a lick. Opening his eyes, he saw Hu Po's head in front of him, its large tongue licking his face happily. Pushing it away, Lu Yi sat up. He didn't know how long he had slept, but his exhaustion had long been swept away. Rubbing his face, he regained his energy. The aroma of food came from outside. Lu Yi walked out curiously, but saw a table full of food on the table outside. It was still steaming hot. Obviously, it had been prepared not long ago. The door was pushed open, and Yi walked in with a plate of food. Seeing Lu Yi, she said in surprise, "You're awake." Lu Yi answered and sat at the table. He picked up the chopsticks and started eating. Somewhat surprised, he asked, "You made this?" Yi giggled. "Second senior sister made it. I brought it over." No wonder the taste was exactly the same as second senior sister's. Thinking about it, Yi probably didn't have such skills. As he ate, he chatted casually with Yi. The table full of food was quickly swept clean by Lu Yi. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yi cleared the table, and Lu Yi walked out of the main hall to stretch his body. An hour later, in the main hall, Lu Yi and Yi sat facing each other, with Hu Po between them. "It's starting," Lu Yi said. Yi answered excitedly, "It's ready." Lu Yi smiled, and took out all the spirit sticks that belonged to him from his storage space. Then, he casually crushed a white spirit stick. A white vortex appeared, and a large amount of pure spiritual power surged out from that vortex. It condensed and lingered in front of the two people and one tiger. There was almost no need to refine it. Just by breathing, the power could flow into the body and become the capital of one's strength. The white spirit stick didn't last long. After a stick of incense worth of time, it completely disappeared. Lu Yi raised his hand and crushed another one. When the white spirit stick was exhausted, he used green. When the green spirit stick was exhausted, he used blue. After that, he used purple. Finally, he used 5 golden spirit sticks. When the effect of the second golden spirit stick was about to be exhausted, Lu Yi clearly felt that the river of spiritual power in his body had reached a limit, and the familiar feeling of fullness came again. This was a sign of a breakthrough. He had broken through to the third order realm when he returned from the sealed world in the realm of beasts, and he had even taken a step towards the third order realm. Later, he had obtained a purple spirit lot from Xia Qian, and after so many days of swallowing spirit pills, he was not far from the fourth order realm. Now that he was about to break through, it was a matter of course. More and more spiritual power was being swallowed and refined, pouring into his body and increasing the volume of the river of spiritual power. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi felt the river of spiritual power in his body swell, and then the feeling of fullness suddenly disappeared, as if something had been broken, replaced by an indescribable sense of comfort. A wave of qi swept out in all directions. Fourth order cloud river realm. Compared to his previous breakthroughs, the time it took for him to break through from the third order to the fourth order was undoubtedly much longer, but this was mainly because of the recent delay. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken so long. If he had been a fourth order cloud river realm cultivator in the hunting ground, killing the seventh order He Bing wouldn't have been so troublesome. However, in the hunting ground, Lu Yi didn't dare to use the spirit stick to improve his strength. After all, a golden spirit stick could last for a day and night. If he encountered an enemy during this time, it would be too wasteful. Almost at the same time as he broke through to the fourth order cloud river realm, Yi and Hupa also experienced changes. The light on Yi's body flashed fiercely, and Hupo's vitality also surged for a moment. Obviously, they had also broken through. However, Yi was a spirit body, and Hupa was a monster beast, so it wasn't easy to distinguish their cultivation realms, but judging from the spiritual energy fluctuations they showed, they had undoubtedly stepped into the second-order cloud river realm. There were still 3 golden spirit sticks left, so he continued to cultivate. 3 days later, all the spirit sticks were consumed. The 2 people and 1 tiger didn't break through again. Lu Yi was still a fourth-order cultivator, but after consuming 3 golden spirit sticks, he had accumulated quite a bit of fourth-order cultivation. As for Hupa and Yi, they were both stuck at the third-order cloud river realm. As long as they cultivated for a while, they should be able to break through. As one's cultivation improved, the consumption of resources would also increase, so naturally, the more spirit sticks one had, the better. The spirit sticks Lu Yi obtained needed to be shared with Yi and Hupa. Fortunately, his cultivation environment wasn't too harsh. Having a good environment was naturally good, but it didn't matter if it wasn't. He could just take a spirit pill. This was an advantage that no cultivator could have. Several days had passed since the 1-month deadline with Li Baxian, so it was time to join him in the Cloud River battlefield. There were still 6 golden spirit sticks left in his hand, but he had to give them to his 4th senior brother and Feng Yuchan. After all, these things belonged to them. There was also a grade A spring spirit, which he had to find a suitable place to settle down in the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi didn't have high requirements for his cultivation environment, but Yi still needed it. 4th senior brother and Feng Yuchan also needed it, and there was also giant armor. Thinking of giant armor, Lu Ye's eyes couldn't help but twitch. The last time he contacted giant armor was nearly 2 months ago. At that time, this guy got lost in the Cloud River battlefield, so Lu Yi told him to wait for him in a certain place. After such a long time, he didn't know how giant armor was doing. Speaking of which, he had been in the hunting ground for nearly 20 days, but giant armor hadn't contacted him. After packing up a little, Lu Yi brought Hupa and Yi out of Green Bamboo Peak and soon arrived at Principal Defender Peak. He met Shui Yuan, and told her that he wanted to enter the Cloudy River battlefield. Shui Yuan did not stop him, and only reminded him to be careful. After all, for cultivators of the Cloudy River tier, entering the Cloudy River battlefield to cultivate was the fastest way to increase their cultivation level, because only there could cultivators obtain spirit lots. After bidding farewell to Shui Yuan, Lu Yi went straight to the Tianji Hall. He raised his hand and pressed on the Tianji pillar, connecting his mind to the Cloud River battlefield. In the next moment, a large number of light spots appeared in his consciousness. Each light spot represented a Tianji pillar. Lu Yi could choose any light spot and enter the location of the Tianji pillar. Last time, he entered like this, directly entering a Tianji business alliance. However, among the large number of light spots, there was one light spot that was particularly special. The other light spots were all white, and only this light spot was blue. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi realized that this blue light spot represented the Tianji pillar that he had invited from the hunting ground. Chapter 553. The Tianji pillar could only be used by cultivators with their own merit points and those with their permission. Others could not use it. Therefore, although the Tianji pillar in the hunting ground was worth 100,000 merit points, it was still an abandoned object in the end. He had not agreed on a rendezvous point with Li Baxian, but Lu Yi had a feeling that they would be waiting for him near the hunting ground. Therefore, after a brief consideration, Lu Yi chose the blue dot of light. His vision changed and his body became light. In an instant, he disappeared from the Tianji Hall. Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi appeared in front of the Tianji pillar in front of the hunting ground and immediately scanned the surroundings. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Although this place was very lively more than a month ago, it had been so long since the hunting ground closed that there were naturally no longer any cultivators lingering here. However, when he looked around, he could still vaguely see the various traces of the previous battle. In particular, the place where Lu Yi used the Fire Phoenix spirit pattern to wreak havoc was filled with scorched earth, showing the brutality of the battle that day. Lu Yi pressed his hand on the battlefield imprint and sent a message, "Fourth senior brother, I'm back." Soon, he received Li Baxian's reply. Lu Ye's guess was right. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan had not gone far. Because they had not agreed on a rendezvous point, the two of them had been training in the nearby area for more than a month, waiting for Lu Yi to return. After a brief exchange, they agreed to meet at the nearby Tianji Business Alliance. Lu Yi then sent a message to Giant Armor. He gave a simple reply, location. On a certain spiritual peak, a tall, statue-like figure sat upright. His body was full of traces of wind and frost and the place he sat was almost covered in fallen leaves. The tall figure was not breathing and the aura on his body was extremely faint. There was not even much vitality flowing out of him. Even if someone passed by him, they would probably think that he was a dead person. After sitting here for nearly 2 months, the giant armor had entered a state of silence. Previously, when he received Lu Ye's message telling him to wait at the same place, he had obediently stayed there until now. He did not even notice the passage of time. It was only when the battlefield imprint moved that the giant armor slowly opened its eyes and lowered its head to check the information. Leaves fluttered down, and the 2 birds squatting on top of its head flapped their wings and flew up. Giant carapace scratched its head and grabbed a bird's nest from the top of its head. It seemed like it could not bear to destroy the bird's nest. After some thought, it put it back on its head. Lu Yi asked him to report his current location. Although Giant Armor had some doubts, he still reported his current location. On the other side, Lu Yi looked at Giant Armor's information and was stunned because the location it reported was exactly the same as the one it gave 2 months ago. "You haven't left yet?" Roar. "Continue waiting for me there." Oh. After ending the communication with Lu Yi, Giant Armor vaguely sensed that something was wrong with its surroundings. It turned its head and saw giant wolves the size of calves, either crouching or standing, staring at it with their beastly eyes. There were many giant wolves, at least 100 of them. If it were any other cultivator who encountered such a thing, they would turn pale with fright. However, Giant Armor was only stunned for a moment because he did not see any malice in the eyes of these giant wolves. Instead, it was more of a human-like surprise and curiosity. These giant wolves did not seem to expect Giant Armor to be alive. After all, for nearly 2 months, Giant Armor had not moved at all, and his breathing was not obvious at all. All the giant wolves treated him as a dead object. After observing for a moment, Giant Armor closed its eyes again and quickly entered that strange state of silence again. Being surrounded by such a pack of wolves, he did not feel any sense of danger. In his mind, it was fine as long as the other party did not have any malice towards him. Moreover, even if the wolf pack really wanted to surround and attack him, he was not without the ability to protect himself. Seeing Giant Armor fall silent again, the slightly chaotic wolf pack also calmed down. Not long after, a huge wolf came in front of Giant Armor and sniffed it carefully, as if it wanted to confirm whether this fellow in front of it was dead or alive. In the end, it walked away in confusion. Night fell, and the moon was bright and the stars were few. Under the cover of the moonlight, a milky white glow suddenly appeared on Giant Armor's body. That glow seemed to produce a strange resonance with the moonlight in the sky, guiding the moonlight to pour down in torrents. As far as the eye could see, the moonlight surged endlessly on the huge Spirit Peak. The entire Spirit Peak was bathed in that milky white glow, making the Spirit Peak appear incomparably sacred. Lu Yi had long known that Giant Armor could absorb moonlight to cultivate. Hoopa had also cultivated with Giant Armor in the past. According to Yi's observations, Hoopa had benefited greatly, but unfortunately, ever since they parted at the Spirit Stream battlefield, they had not seen each other again. The reason this wolf pack was attracted here was because of the strange phenomenon that occurred on the Spirit Peak every night. If Hoopa could benefit from cultivating with Giant Armor, the wolf pack could naturally benefit as well. 5 days after Giant Armor settled down here, this wolf pack discovered his existence. The thought process of monstrous beasts was very simple. Regardless of whether Giant Armor was dead or alive, it was still an existence that could greatly benefit them. So even though Giant Armor had woken up earlier, the wolf pack did not show the slightest bit of malice. In their minds, Giant Armor was equivalent to their tribe's sacred relic. It could rapidly strengthen their tribe, so they had been guarding this place all this time. As the moonlight poured down in torrents, the giant wolves instinctively raised their heads and breathed in and out. The moon was high in the sky, and the strange phenomenon on the Spirit Peak became even more obvious. The wolf pack was not the only one attracted by this strange phenomenon. There were other monstrous beasts as well. Monstrous beasts had a very strong sense of territory. A sacred relic that could strengthen their tribe had long been seen as their exclusive property by the wolf pack. How could they allow other monstrous beasts to encroach on it? So almost every night when there was moonlight, the wolf pack would engage in a great battle with the other monstrous beasts that were attracted here. It was precisely these battles that established the wolf pack's position as sole owner of this territory. Giant Armor was completely unaware of all this. He always felt that he had only rested for a short while. In a guest room of the Tianji Business Alliance, Lu Yi was reading and cultivating. There was a knock on the door, and Lu Yi stood up to open it. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan, who were wearing the masks of a boy and a girl, arrived together. Lu Yi stood up to welcome them. Li Baxian's face was full of shame as he took off his mask. "Little junior brother, I've made you suffer at the hunting ground. Your senior brother wasn't able to help much. I'm ashamed." During this period of time, Li Baxian would feel uneasy whenever he thought of what happened at the hunting ground. Fortunately, Lu Yi had a strong foundation and was blessed by the heavens. In the end, he managed to escape from that hopeless situation. Lu Yi said, "Senior brother, you're too serious. When I was being hunted down, I received help from many experts of the Grand Heaven Alliance. If it weren't for Senior Brother's connections, I wouldn't have been able to last until the end. Li Baxian sighed. In the end, you still have to be strong yourself. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, he and Feng Yuechan had been dominant for many years. However, in the Cloud River battlefield, their former fame had not brought them convenience, but more danger. This made him sigh with emotion. How could Lu Yi not feel the same way? Before the hunting ground, he didn't have too many concerns when walking around the Cloud River battlefield, but after what happened at the hunting ground, he believed that Myriad Demon Ridge would spare no effort to investigate his whereabouts and find a way to hunt him down. In the future, his situation in the Cloud River battlefield would not be as peaceful as before. Feng Yuechan persuaded from the side, strength grows bit by bit, there's no need to rush. Compared to others, our cultivation is already improving very quickly. Senior Sister Feng is right. Lu Yi invited the two of them to take a seat and asked Yi to serve them tea. Only then did he take out the 6 Paths Spirit lot and push it to the two of them. This is Senior Martial Brother and Senior Martial Sister Feng's share. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan didn't refuse and each took 3 spirit sticks. With these golden spirit sticks, they could break through to the 5th order in a short time. This kind of cultivation speed was not slow, and with their current 5th order cultivation, even if they encountered a 7th order master in the future, they might not be their opponent. Lu Yi then took out his spirit beast bag and took out the white and fat grade A spring spirit. This is a grade A spring spirit. Everyone present, except for Lu Yi, was seeing this for the first time and couldn't help feeling curious. Yi came forward and poked it with her hand, only to see the grade A spring spirit curl up. It's still alive. Feng Yuechan was surprised. Should we use this spring spirit for ourselves or sell it? What does Senior Brother think? Lu Yi asked. Li Baxian pondered for a moment before saying, if we sell it, we definitely won't have to worry about it, but ordinary materials won't have much use for us. If we use spirit sticks to trade, we don't know how much this grade A spring spirit will be worth. Besides, others may not be able to gather enough spirit sticks in a short time. Right now, we're only 4th order cultivators and will be staying in the Cloud River battlefield for a long time. If we can obtain a grade A spirit land, our cultivation will be more efficient. Lu Yi nodded, I think so too. Rather than selling this grade A spring spirit in exchange for some spirit sticks, it was indeed better to use it for themselves. Besides, even if they reached the true lake realm in the future and left the Cloud River battlefield, the grade A spirit land they left behind could be passed down to the disciples of their respective sets. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were many spirit lands that had been passed down from generation to generation. They were all exclusive territories of certain sects. But if we really want to use it for ourselves, there are some problems that need to be solved. The biggest problem is the location of the spirit land. Li Baxian said slowly. With a grade A spring spirit, as long as they were in the Cloud River battlefield, they could choose any place to create a grade A spirit land. But if the location was not chosen well, it would be troublesome in the future. First of all, they had to ensure that it was sufficiently hidden. But for Cloud River realm cultivators who came and went, how could there be a particularly hidden place in the Cloud River battlefield? Unless it was a forbidden area that cultivators didn't want to set foot in, like the 10,000 Poison Forest or the Land of Fire in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Even with Lu Yi setting up the array formation, it wasn't too safe. Back then, Lu Yi had left behind an array formation in the Great Sea Spirit Land, but in the end, it was still broken through, and even the Spring Spirit was taken away. Chapter 554. So for Lu Yi and the others, if they really wanted to use this grade A spring for themselves, the first thing they had to solve was the problem of choosing a location. After all, their cultivation bases were not high. With their cultivation bases, occupying a third-grade spiritual land was not a big problem. It would not be easy to attract covetous eyes. However, occupying a first-grade spiritual land was a different story. Once it was discovered by outsiders, it might cause some trouble. Moreover, no matter who they were, their identities were very sensitive, and they were all people that Myriad Devil Ridge wanted to get rid of. Once the fact that they had a spirit land was exposed, it would definitely attract a large number of cultivators from Myriad Devil Ridge. At that time, not only would they not be able to keep the spirit land, even their safety would be a problem. I'll think of a way to choose a location. Li Baxian pondered for a moment. He had been in the Cloud River battlefield longer than Lu Yi, and his connections weren't something that Lu Yi could compare to. It was best to leave this matter to him. Then I'll have to trouble senior apprentice brother. Feng Yuechan said, this grade A spring should create a small-scale spirit land, but even a small-scale spirit land can hold 5 people. We only have 4 people now, so if junior apprentice brother Lu has any suitable candidates, you can rope them in, so that we don't waste a spot. Speaking of candidates, I have one on my side. He turned to Li Baxian, senior apprentice brother, do you still remember Zhu Jia? Feng Yuechan hadn't seen Zhu Jia before, but Li Baxian had. However, they didn't have much interaction, so after pondering for a moment, he remembered, that body cultivator? Yes, he came to the Cloud River battlefield a few months before me. I was going to find him before the hunting ground, but I was delayed by the hunting ground, and haven't been able to meet up with him. Li Baxian nodded, his physique seems to be a bit unusual, junior apprentice brother has good eyes. Since that's the case, junior apprentice brother can call him over to meet up with us, and we'll have 5 people. And among the 5 of them, 1 body and 1 weapon, 1 sword and 2 spells, such a lineup was very reasonable. If they encountered any trouble in the future, they could work together to deal with it. Lu Yi sighed, Zhu Jia doesn't seem to be able to tell directions. I told him to come and meet up with me, but he got lost in a forest deep in the mountains. I told him to wait for me there, so I still need to find him. Li Baxian couldn't help but laugh. So there's something like that. It was hard to imagine that someone as big as Zhu Jia could get lost in the Cloudy River battlefield. However, there were always some people with special temperaments in this world that could not be judged by common sense. In that case, junior martial brother Lu should go and look for junior martial brother Giant Armor first. It just so happens that senior martial brother and I are cultivating here with the help of the spirit sticks. Later on, we'll look for a place to place the spring spirit. That's good. Lu Yi nodded in agreement. After the discussion was done, Lu Yi did not stay for long. Giant Beetle had been waiting for him for almost 2 months. He did not know if it was anxious. A moment later, Lu Yi walked out from the front of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and summoned his flying spirit artifact. He took to the sky and flew towards the direction that the giant armor had given him earlier. Based on the map, Giant Armor's current location was in a mountain range called Mount Tai Mang. From the map, it could be seen that Mount Tai Mang was extremely large, and the core area was clearly marked with the word Overlord. This meant that there were Overlord-class demonic beasts living in the deepest part of the Taimang Mountains. Overlord was not a cultivation realm, but a title. It was a title that had reached the pinnacle of strength. The Overlord-class demonic beasts on the Spirit Stream battlefield had reached the limit of what the Spirit Stream battlefield could accommodate. The same was true for the Overlord-class demonic beasts on the Cloud River battlefield. They had reached the limit of what the Cloud River battlefield could accommodate. The strength of the two was completely different. After all, their cultivation realms were different. Under normal circumstances, places where Overlord-class demonic beasts lived were basically forbidden areas for cultivators. No cultivator would be willing to trespass into an Overlord-class demonic beast's territory unless they were tired of living. This was also the reason why Lu Yi was able to establish himself as an overlord in the Myriad Devil Ridge as a cultivator, causing a huge impact on the hearts of the large sections. Since ancient times, no cultivator on the Spirit Stream battlefield had ever achieved such a feat. Even Feng Yuechan, who had dominated the Spirit Rhino ranking for more than 10 years, had not been able to do so. The fact that there were Overlord-class demonic beasts at the core of Mount Tai Mang undoubtedly meant that this was not a good place. In such a deep mountain forest, there were bound to be many demonic beasts living there. In the wilderness, the deeper one went, the more dangerous it was. Mount Tai Mang was not close. Even with Lu Ye's current speed, it would take him at least 10 days to reach it. Fortunately, he had Yi and Hupa to accompany him along the way, so the journey was not boring. Furthermore, he could take turns to fly with Yi, so if they traveled day and night, the journey time would be cut in half. Flying along the way, Lu Yi enjoyed the unique scenery of the Cloud River battlefield. Nothing happened along the way. Occasionally, he would encounter some cultivators, but most of them did not disturb each other. There were a few who wanted to cause trouble because of their higher cultivation or numbers, but Lu Yi avoided them in advance or used his flight wings to escape. With his current 4th order cultivation, as long as he wasn't targeted by some 8th or 9th order masters, he generally wouldn't be in any danger. There were quite a few 8th or 9th order masters on the Cloud River battlefield, but no one would chase after a cultivator from an unknown faction for no reason. During the journey, Lu Yi did not forget to take pills and cultivate. 6 days passed in a flash. The travel-worn Lu Yi broke into Mount Tai Mang and contacted Giant Armor again to determine its exact location. Looking at the map, Lu Yi raised his brow. Giant Armor was quite courageous. Its current location was not on the periphery of Mount Tai Mang, but rather deep inside. After staying there for so long, Lu Yi did not know if it had encountered any danger. However, this guy had a special physique and thick skin. His ability to protect himself was something that Lu Yi could not compare to, so there was no need to worry about his safety. There were quite a few figures of cultivators appearing and disappearing in the Taimang Mountains. Most of them were in groups, and very few of them were alone. This was a paradise for monster beasts. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, there were 7 or 8 places where monster beasts gathered like Mount Tai Mang. Such places were naturally popular for cultivators. Cultivators could hunt demonic beasts here and collect some natural treasures in exchange for some cultivation resources they needed. Although the cultivators from the various large sects had a monthly salary, it was basically not enough to meet the cultivators' cultivation needs. The reason for this was not entirely because the sects were stingy, but more because it was intentional. If the sect's monthly salary was enough to meet a cultivator's cultivation needs, then there would be no need for cultivators to go out on adventures, and it would be detrimental to their own growth. Therefore, no matter how prosperous the sects were, the monthly salary given to their disciples would never meet all their needs. The more powerful the sects were, the more it was like this, so that their disciples would develop the habit of relying on themselves for everything. Lu Yi had enough cultivation resources. Even if he did not enter the Cloud River battlefield, he could still increase his own cultivation by consuming spirit pills in his sect. However, there was not much meaning in growing like this. Cultivators could only obtain strength that matched their own realm by constantly experiencing all kinds of hardships and battles. In the end, the growth of one's cultivation was just for show. Less than half a day after Lu Yi entered Mount Tai Mang, he felt the aftermath of several battles. It was obvious that some cultivators were fighting with monster beasts. He observed one of the battles from afar and found that the cultivators had a tacit understanding. Some were on guard, some were fighting head-on, and some were attacking from the shadows. With such cooperation, as long as they chose a suitable opponent, it would not take long for the battle to end and they could obtain some spoils of war. Along the way, they encountered a few monster beasts that were alone. They were not very strong, and with the cooperation of Lu Yi and Hu Pe, they easily killed them. They collected the monster beast's blood, monster cores, and some useful items from the monster beasts in case of an emergency. When he was in the spirit stream tier, Lu Yi had also killed some monster beasts. However, the items from those monster beasts were not very valuable, so he did not waste any effort to collect them. However, it was different when he reached the Cloud River tier. Not to mention other things, Cloud River tier monster beasts had monster cores, which were Hoopo's favorite. Previously, when he left the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, he had spent nearly 10,000 merit points to buy a batch of monster cores and put them in Hoopo's storage pouch as snacks. Moreover, the blood of monster beasts could be used to cultivate the Tao of inscriptions. As for the other miscellaneous materials, some could be used to refine pills, some could be used to refine tools, and so on. It all depended on the person who used them. The deeper they went, the stronger the monster beasts they encountered. On the contrary, the figures of cultivators became fewer and fewer. If the outermost area of the Great Mang Mountains was a place where any Cloud River tier cultivator could enter to gain experience, then in Lu Ye's current location, without a 5th or 6th order Cloud River tier cultivator, it would be difficult to guarantee his safety. At this point, Lu Yi did not dare to fly in the air unscrupulously. There were many bird-type monster beasts in this damned place. If he encountered them in the air, it would be difficult for him to have a good ending. He really did not understand. Giant beetle had just lost its way. How did it run into such a deep mountain forest? When he found it later, he would have to teach it a good lesson. In the future, it should not run around in such a dangerous place. Night fell. Lu Yi was looking for a secluded place to rest when he suddenly sensed something and looked in a certain direction. There seemed to be some voices coming from that direction. It was the sound of people talking, and there seemed to be quite a number of them. After a moment of thought, he stuffed Hoopa into his spirit beast pouch and enhanced himself with his concealment spirit tattoo, quietly moving in that direction. A moment later, an open space appeared in front of him. There were at least 30 or 40 cultivators gathered in the open space. Some of them were alone, while others were in groups of 3 or 5. Lu Yi did not know what they were doing here. However, many of them were meditating and conserving their strength. It seemed that they were about to take action. With so many people gathered, it was obvious that they were not from the same sect or even the same camp. Moreover, some of them were obviously injured. To be continued. Chapter 555. At the periphery of the open space, Lu Yi concealed himself and observed silently. He still didn't understand why these people were gathered here, nor did he know their origins, so he naturally didn't want to reveal himself. However, one after another, many cultivators rushed over from all directions and walked into the open space. Seeing this situation, Lu Yi thought for a moment, then simply removed his concealment state and walked forward boldly. A few gazes swept over, but they quickly moved away. The mask Lu Yi wore concealed his appearance, and he had stored the amber in his spirit beast pouch in advance, so even if some people thought he was hiding his head and tail, they didn't think much of it. Although not every cultivator liked to do this, there were still many who wore masks on the battlefield. He casually found a corner and sat down cross-legged, taking a posture of taking things as they came, while silently paying attention to the movements around him. Soon, he heard some things from the conversations of some people, but these people didn't talk specifically. He could only vaguely infer that some kind of treasure had appeared nearby. Every night when there was moonlight, a strange phenomenon would appear, and the reason these people gathered here was to seize the treasure. Unfortunately, the place where the treasure appeared was extremely dangerous, with a large number of powerful monster beasts gathered in the surroundings, so even though these cultivators had worked hard for many days, no one had been able to find out what the treasure was. Lu Yi had heard of the emergence of rare treasures in the past. It could be considered a type of opportunity, but treasures that could produce such a phenomenon were rare. Under normal circumstances, such a phenomenon would be extremely valuable. It was no wonder that so many cultivators had gathered here. And this was only what Lu Yi saw. If he didn't see it, there might be more cultivators gathering. After discovering the purpose of these people gathering here, Lu Yi suddenly lost interest. He had only come here to look for the giant armor. Although the treasure was good, so many people had spent many days and still failed to obtain it, so he didn't feel that he had any special hope. Thinking so, Lu Yi was about to leave. However, at that moment, a low shout sounded, "It's begun." Once this was said, the cultivators gathered here all stood up and flew into the air, looking in a certain direction. Looking in the direction they were looking, Lu Yi saw a pillar of moonlight pouring down from the sky above a spirit mountain. The entire spirit mountain was enveloped by a kind of majestic and hazy moonlight, making the spirit mountain exude a kind of sacred aura. A strange phenomenon in the sky. As expected, a treasure has appeared, someone exclaimed, his eyes filled with surprise. This kind of treasure that could produce strange phenomena was no small matter. If a Cloud River tier cultivator obtained it, even if they couldn't use it, they could still sell it for a large amount of cultivation resources. This treasure must be very attractive to monster beasts. Every night when there's moonlight, a large number of monster beasts gather there and kill each other. It's a pity that so far, no one has been able to clearly see what that treasure is. On the contrary, many people have died there. Everyone, when we take action later, we must sincerely cooperate. At the very least, we must first understand what kind of treasure it is. Fellow Taoist, you are right. As the conversation entered Lu Ye's ears, he stared fixedly at the strange phenomenon of the tilted moonlight and frowned. Why did this scene look a little familiar? He couldn't help but recall the scene in the Heaven Expanse sect and Hupa cultivated under the moon with giant armor. Comparatively, the scene in front of him was a little more magnificent. Lu Yi suddenly had some bad guesses in his heart. With this thought, he hurriedly sent a message to Giant Armor. Soon, he received a reply from Giant Armor. Lu Yi thought for a moment and gave him some instructions. The next moment, the strange phenomena on the mountain peak where moonlight poured down suddenly disappeared without a trace. The corner of Lu Ye's eye twitched, and he instantly understood that he was right. That was not the sign of some strange treasure appearing at all, but Giant Armor cultivating. A Cloud River tier cultivator causing such a big commotion and even attracting so many cultivators to investigate, there was no one else. Just as Lu Yi was cursing in his heart, the disappearance of the strange phenomena caused the expressions of many cultivators to change. Someone succeeded. If someone hadn't succeeded, that strange phenomenon couldn't have disappeared for no reason. Once this was said, many cultivators became anxious and hurried in the direction of the spirit mountain. At the same time, low growls and roars also came from the direction of the spirit mountain, accompanied by chaotic fluctuations of spirit power. Under the moonlight, many birds flew in the air, and colorful lights began to bloom. The cultivators hadn't entered yet, but the demonic beasts there had already started fighting because of the disappearance of the strange phenomena. To many cultivators, this kind of scene was already not strange because almost every night with moonlight, the demonic beasts there would be a chaotic battle, and many powerful demonic beasts had already died near the spirit mountain. Wolf howls sounded, one after another, and gradually suppressed the other beast howls. Lu Yi floated in midair and stared fixedly in the direction of the spirit mountain. There was not a single cultivator around, and he had a headache. The strange phenomena were brought about by Giant Armor's cultivation. Not only did it attract many cultivators, but it also attracted many demonic beasts to fight endlessly over there. One could imagine how chaotic the scene there was. Giant Armor's situation was naturally not very good. Lu Yi pondered for a moment, then flew over in a flash. However, before he could get close, a huge shadow fell from the sky. Accompanying the shadow was a bolt of lightning that resembled a swimming dragon. It was a storm thunder eagle, and judging from the power of its attack, it was a demonic beast equivalent to an 8th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Lu Yi didn't dare to take such a ferocious attack head-on, so he immediately controlled the spirit boat and dodged to the left and right while falling straight down. But the lightning was like a living creature, chasing after him relentlessly. Landing in a sorry state, Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain-coiling saber and slashed at the incoming lightning. The huge impact sent Lu Yi flying diagonally, and the power of the lightning coursed through his body, causing him to feel numb. Barely stabilizing his body, the Storm Thunder Eagle attacked again. Lu Yi raised his hand and slashed out a few saber waves, slightly obstructing the Storm Thunder Eagle, and at the same time, pouncing to the side. A fishy smell lingered at the tip of his nose, and at the same time, a large amount of gray fog ignited on his talent tree. A strong wind came from behind, and Lu Yi hurriedly fell to the side. In his field of vision, a thick figure swept past in front of him. It was a poisonous python that had been lying in ambush nearby. It originally wanted to sneak attack Lu Yi, but Lu Yi dodged and took the opportunity to pounce on the Storm Thunder Eagle. The two huge demonic beasts instantly clashed, and the eagle's cry rang out continuously. A moment later, the Thunder Eagle flew up high, its sharp claws digging into the poisonous python's flesh, while the poisonous python's body coiled around the Thunder Eagle's body. Lu Yi was left standing on the spot, sweating profusely. The scene was extremely chaotic. Many demonic beasts of different races gathered here to fight, and with the addition of cultivators, the area within 100 kilometers was a complete mess. Lu Yi had only traveled 10 kilometers, but he had already encountered several dangers. He even saw a cultivator suspected to be a 7th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator get slapped to death by a bear-like demonic beast. His death was extremely miserable. He couldn't go any deeper. This place was too dangerous. Even a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator might not be able to guarantee his own safety here. No wonder he had heard the cultivators say that many days had passed, but no one had figured out what the strange treasure was. This place was not close to the Spirit Peak where giant armor was cultivating, but it was already so cruel. One could imagine what the situation would be like closer to the Spirit Peak. Trying to figure out what the strange treasure was in such a situation was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Moreover, the cultivators' plans were destined to fail, because there was no strange treasure at all. There was only giant armor. Lu Yi was very curious. How did giant armor survive in such a chaotic scene? Did the demonic beasts not attack him? Even if he had entered the Cloud River battlefield a few months earlier than Lu Yi, and even if his monster core still had excess energy, giant armor's cultivation shouldn't be too high. But thinking about it carefully, the demonic beasts might really not attack giant armor, because the phenomenon brought about by giant armor's cultivation could also benefit the demonic beasts. This was also the reason why so many demonic beasts had gathered here. Raising his hand and pressing on the battlefield mark, Lu Yi sent a message to giant armor, then quietly retreated to the periphery. Giant armor had stayed here for nearly 2 months without any danger, so he should be safe tonight. After dawn, Lu Yi could just ask him to meet up with him. Lu Yi was close to him now, so he couldn't get lost. Time passed, and the battle between the demonic beasts continued. Most of the cultivators had already retreated, because the phenomenon was gone. This meant that someone had likely taken away the unknown treasure. Since that was the case, they naturally didn't take the risk. However, there were also bold cultivators who took advantage of the chaotic situation to take advantage of it. Normally, it wasn't easy to kill high-level demonic beasts, but here, there were some opportunities to take advantage. For example, at this moment, Lu Yi was staring in front of him in a daze, feeling the wonders of fate. Not far in front of him, a huge figure was desperately struggling. It was the Tempest Eagle that had attacked him before. The Tempest Eagle's condition was obviously not good, because there was a poisonous python coiled around its body, and the ground was covered in beast blood. The poisonous python was not moving, so it was most likely dead. However, the Tempest Eagle's condition wasn't much better. Lu Yi could clearly feel its vitality rapidly fading away, and its body was covered in a layer of faint green aura. This was clearly a sign of poisoning. Lu Yi didn't expect to run into these two demonic beasts when he retreated in this direction. After observing for a while and confirming that the Tempest Eagle was at the end of its tether, Lu Yi immediately raised his saber and charged forward. The killing intent startled the struggling Tempest Eagle, and its sharp gaze swept over. Even if its life was hanging by a thread, it still displayed the majesty of a king. Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain saber and dragged it along, easily dodging a few lightning strikes that were only as thick as chopsticks. As he leaped high, he slashed down with his saber. The sharp cry of the Tempest Eagle rang out, and the sharp blade cut through the Tempest Eagle's head, causing blood to spurt into the sky. To be continued. Chapter 556. These two monster beasts were comparable to 8th or 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators, and Lu Yi was no match for any of them, but at this moment, one of them was dead while the other was seriously injured. Lu Yi could not help but feel that he had been blessed by the heavens. Taking out the empty water bag, Lu Yi collected the beast blood and then took out the monster cores of the two monster beasts. Each monster core was not small. The Thunder Eagle's monster core was wrapped in a faint trace of thunder while the Poisonous Python's monster core was a dark green color. At a glance, it was obvious that it was quite poisonous. After all, these were the essence of the two monster beasts' cultivation and were completely compatible with their own attributes. The Thunder Eagle's monster core could be fed to Hupo while the Poisonous Python's monster core could be given to Hua Xiai. She should like it. Next, Lu Yi took some materials that he thought were valuable, such as eagle claws, eagle beak, eagle feathers, and so on. Finally, he dismembered the entire body of the poisonous python and put it into his storage space, then calmly withdrew. The flesh and blood of demonic beasts had always been a great supplement. Those body cultivators had to consume large amounts of demonic beasts' flesh and blood almost every day because this was the only way to strengthen their vitality. Therefore, no matter where it was, there was no lack of demand for the flesh and blood of demonic beasts. As for snake meat, it was Lu Yi and Hu Po's favorite. Since the first time they ate it, they could not forget it. This was a rare opportunity, so Lu Yi naturally would not miss it. As his figure disappeared into the distance, the noise behind him gradually disappeared. Lu Yi found a secluded place, laid down a spirit array, and waited. Time passed, and from time to time, the figures of cultivators and monster beasts would pass by in the air or nearby. It was not until dawn that the chaos completely subsided. Lu Yi sent a message to Giant Armor, asking him to come and meet up with him. On top of the Spirit Peak, Giant Armor's tall figure stood. Hundreds of giant wolves gathered around him from all directions. Many of them were staring at him, especially the leader of the pack. It was completely white and more majestic than the other wolves. At this moment, it was standing 30 feet away from Giant Armor. It lowered its head slightly and looked down at him. Its eyes were filled with confusion. After a night of bloody battle, many of the giant wolves were injured and were now silently licking their wounds. There were also giant wolves who dragged the corpses of other monster beasts over and ate with their companions, their mouths full of blood. The wolf pack was very united, so no matter how many other monster beasts came, they would be able to repel them. This was the biggest reason why they had been able to occupy this spirit peak recently. But at this moment, their sacred relic, not only alive, he was also alive, showing signs of leaving. How could the wolf packs leaving? They had been here for less than 2 months, but they had already personally experienced the benefits that the holy relic brought to their race. The mountain breeze blew, and Giant Armor, who was staring at the giant wolf, had a helpless expression. He never knew that there were so many wonderful things around him. After being alerted by Lu Ye's message last night, the chaos around him had left him at a loss for a moment. Fortunately, he knew that the situation was not good at that time, so he did not dare to act rashly and had been waiting in place. With the protection of the wolf pack, other monster beasts and even cultivators would not be able to get close to this spirit mountain. Now that Lu Yi had sent him a message saying that he was nearby, he had to meet up with him. But the wolf didn't seem to want him to leave. Although there was no communication, Giant Armor could feel the wolf's thoughts. After looking at each other for a long time, Giant Armor said in a muffled voice, "Lu Yi is looking for me." The wolf tilted its head, as if it didn't understand. Although its strength was comparable to a Cloud River Realm 9th Order and it understood human language, monster beasts lived in the mountains and forests all year round. They rarely came into contact with cultivators, so how could they understand human language? Giant Armor put his plan into action. He walked forward and raised his hand to push the wolf away. "Don't block the way," he said in a low voice. With a casual push, he pushed the wolf, who was taller than him, back a few steps. Giant Armor walked past the wolf and headed in a certain direction. The surrounding giant wolves, whether they were healing their wounds or eating the flesh, all stood up and looked at the tall figure that was about to leave. They seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Their tribe's sacred artifact was running away. How could they let this happen? With a howl, the alpha wolf strode forward and caught up with Giant Armor. It lowered its head and gently lifted it up, causing Giant Armor to fly high into the air. When he landed, he was sitting firmly on the alpha wolf's back. If the sacred artifact wanted to leave, it couldn't be stopped. Then follow. Seeing through the wolf's thoughts, Giant Armor didn't refuse. He raised his hand and pointed in a direction, this way. The wolf took a step forward, and its vigorous figure shuttled through the mountain forest. Behind him was a large pack of giant wolves. Wherever they passed, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Dozens of kilometers away, at Lu Ye's hiding place, he had already released Hoopa from his spirit beast bag. Yi was lurking nearby on guard. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi suddenly felt a trace of abnormality. He quickly raised his hand and pressed it to the ground. He couldn't help but frown. There was some movement on the ground. It seemed that many monster beasts were galloping. To be able to make such a big movement, there was no doubt that there were many monster beasts. And judging from the movement, it seemed that they were getting closer and closer. This was not a place to stay for long. At this moment, a message came from the battlefield imprint. Lu Yi checked and found that it was from Yi. Lu Yi, Giant Armor brought a lot of giant wolves over. Lu Yi looked at the message and didn't understand for a moment. What did she mean by bringing a lot of giant wolves over? Just as he was about to ask for clarification, he saw a snow-white figure in his field of vision dashing over. On the back of the snow-white figure, there was another tall figure. Looking at that tall figure, Lu Yi was slightly dazed. Hoopa, who was crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, also widened his tiger eyes and stared at this scene in astonishment. A moment later, the snow-white figure stopped 100 feet away from Lu Yi. Its wolf eyes quietly stared at Lu Yi, its soft fur fluttering in the wind. And behind this figure, there were no less than 100 giant wolves following closely. Lu Yi finally understood what Yi meant. Giant Armor really did bring a lot of giant wolves over. What was going on? Lu Yi was unable to react for a while. Giant Armor was just an individual cultivator. He had never heard of him having the ability to control beasts, so how could he be with so many giant wolves? And looking at his posture at the moment, it seemed that this entire wolf pack was obeying his orders. Lu Yi couldn't help but recall some of the movements last night. He had indeed heard the howls of wolves one after another. Now that he thought about it, it should have been caused by this wolf pack. What surprised him even more was the quality of this wolf pack. The one carrying the giant armor was definitely a monster beast comparable to a Cloud River 9th Order monster beast. As for the other giant wolves, they all exuded a ferocious aura. Most of them were 4th or 5th Order monster beasts, with 8th or 9th Order monster beasts everywhere. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the combat power of such a wolf pack was. After not seeing each other for more than half a year, Giant Armor was obviously very happy to see each other again. There was even a hint of a smile on its usually dull face. It flipped over and jumped down from the wolf's back, striding towards Lu Yi. When he got close, his shadow covered Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked up at this big man and was surprised to find that he had grown taller again. His plain clothes couldn't hide his figure, and his exposed skin had a bronze luster to it, as if it was made of fine iron. He raised his big hand and patted Lu Yi on the shoulder, causing Lu Yi to lower his body. Giant Armor grinned and didn't say anything, simply expressing the joy of reuniting after a long time. Hoopa jumped up from Lu Ye's shoulder and landed on Giant Armor's head before skillfully lying down. In the wilderness, two figures, one tall and one short, stood opposite each other. Behind the tall figure, hundreds of snow-white giant wolves waited quietly. The scene was indescribably strange. Lu Yi tilted his body and looked through Giant Armor's shadow, looking at the giant wolves and asking in a low voice, "What's the situation?" For the time being, these giant wolves were brought here by Giant Armor and didn't show any malice towards him or Giant Armor, but Lu Yi was still a little worried. They hadn't seen each other for more than half a year, so how could Giant Armor have subdued such a wolf pack? "They're following me," Giant Armor said helplessly. "Why?" Giant Armor shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. He had been waiting for Lu Yi on the Spirit Peak, but when he opened his eyes a few days ago, he saw a large pack of giant wolves gathered around him. Today, when he wanted to leave, the wolf pack followed him. He didn't understand why the wolf pack insisted on following him. Seeing that he didn't understand, Lu Yi gave up helplessly and said, "Then come with me. I've made an appointment with 4th senior brother and senior sister Feng. Let's go find them." Giant Armor had no objections. Lu Yi raised his hand and summoned his spirit boat. He called out to Yi, who was hiding nearby, and immediately revealed herself. She first greeted Giant Armor before leaping onto the spirit boat. Giant Armor also stepped onto the spirit boat. However, at that moment, a snow-white figure charged over like a gust of wind and crashed into the spirit boat, causing it to flip over. Lu Yi and the others also fell to the ground in a sorry state. Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain pan saber and looked warily at the alpha wolf standing not far away. However, he quickly put away his saber because although the wolf had knocked over the spirit boat, it didn't seem to have any strong intention of attacking. It seemed to only want to stop them from leaving. It wasn't him who was stopping them, but Giant Armor. The alpha wolf didn't seem to want Giant Armor to leave. Combining last night's experience with what he saw now, Lu Yi vaguely had some guesses in his heart. The phenomenon caused by the Giant Armor's cultivation had attracted so many monstrous beasts. There was no doubt that the phenomenon was very useful to monstrous beasts. If the wolf pack wanted to keep the Giant Armor for this reason, it made sense. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi said, "Think of a way to communicate with them. Ask them what they want." Yi nodded and said, "Okay." Yi naturally couldn't communicate with monster beasts on her own, but with Hoopa's help, it would be possible. Hoopa jumped down from Giant Armor's head. His body trembled, and his monster chi surged. He revealed his true form and walked majestically to the alpha wolf. Then, Lu Yi saw a scene that he couldn't understand. Hoopa and the wolf howled and howled. They communicated for about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn before they turned around and walked back. Yi stood beside Lu Yi and sensed Hoopa's thoughts. She understood, they don't want Giant Armor to leave. They want Giant Armor to stay. The alpha wolf also said that Giant Armor is their sacred item. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.